The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com. The Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242 or visit tomsbeets.com. And welcome back to the Free Speech TV fundraising membership. Become part of the revolution and the resistance moment here. Your opportunity to call 877-378-8669 and make a contribution to Free Speech TV, this television network that is the little network that could and is. We are having an impact, and it really. Look back just like at the Bernie movement. Might that have happened had Bernie not been on this program for 11 years, every single Friday, talking to people all across the United States? One of Bernie's top staffers told me that literally everywhere they went, all over the country, when these large crowds would show up, people would start yelling, "Brunch with Bernie." This is like, which is not to take credit for Bernie and his phenomena. Bernie's an amazing man and politician, and whether he'd ever been on my show or not, he may well have done exactly what he did. But we helped. And that's the point. And there's much more to do. I mean, we've got serious work ahead of us right now here in the United States, dealing with the crisis, basically, of a kleptocratic administration, a wholly sold-out Republican Party, a semi-corrupted Democratic Party, which is the predictable result of a corrupt political infrastructure that was created by a series of stupid Supreme Court decisions. And this stuff isn't going to get fixed by listening to the news from giant multinational corporations run by right-wing billionaires, which is basically what we've got. It's going to be fixed by people like you and me getting out there and getting active and waking up our friends and communicating, having both a dialogue and a news nexus like this network. So this is really important. 877-378-8669. Our goals are $10,000 a day to raise. That's not that much money, even at $100 a person, when you consider that we're in, I think, 50 million homes just on Dish and Direct, plus we're on cable systems. I believe we're in 60 million homes. Whatever the number is, it's pretty extraordinary. Obviously, not all those people are watching, but there's a lot. So anyhow, our goal of $10,000 a day, we hit $3,000 on Monday. We hit $6,000 yesterday. Thank you. I asked you, to step up, and a lot of people did. I asked the people at Free Speech TV who answer the phones, when they take the calls, I said, what's really hot? What are people? And they said, your book, What Would Jefferson Do? So we've slightly changed the order of things of the premiums that we're giving in the hopes of increasing somewhat the average gift, as it were. So with a $60 gift right now, you get the Pocket Constitution, and this is, a good and useful thing to have. It really is. Whether you get it here or elsewhere, it's, you should have this. And these cards published by the American Civil Liberties Union, two of them, either the Know Your Rights at Demonstrations and Protests or Know Your Rights at College for LGBT Students. So you get that with a $60 gift or $5 a month. Any of these can be, made monthly as well. With a $120 gift, you get Howard Zinn's book, The People's History of the United States, which is, one of the very best history books ever written about the United States. With a $240 gift, you get my book, What Would Jefferson Do? This is a book that I wrote after spending, probably at least 2 years reading these 10 volumes of Jefferson's stuff that came with his old house we bought in 1997 in Vermont. They were all water stained and unsaleable or usable, but they were still readable. And there's some great stuff in there. That's with our $240 gift. Plus, with $240, You get the pocket constitution, and you get the cards about how to know your rights, either at protests or for LGBT folks in college, and you get the Free Speech TV sticker. With a $360 gift, you get Howard Zinn's book, The People's History of the United States. You get a paperback that goes along with this, which is by a variety of other authors called The Voices of the People's History. It goes along, I guess, with people's history. You get the pocket constitution, and you get the Free Speech TV sticker. That's with a $360 gift. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Washington, D.C., and I'll take you to lunch. We'll have a pizza party. Sometimes we get a couple of people from Free Speech TV. Sometimes it's just one or two. It's always nice. I always have a good time. And I've met some just extraordinary people. And in fact, I think you've met some of them as well. So those are the gifts. Those are the different giving levels. And but the bottom line is not so much the gifts and the giving levels. It's that Free Speech TV is so important. It's this little network that runs on an annual budget that's a shoestring. It's a $3 million budget for an entire television network. We're trying to raise $300,000 in this fund drive. We need to raise $10,000 today. Please, your contribution is important. 877-378-8669. Please call. Thank you so much.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Wow, a lot going on. Former Senator Dan Coates, now Director of National Intelligence, along with three of his colleagues, Michael Rogers, I don't have the whole list of the four guys who are testifying right here. But anyhow, they're basically all saying, these guys who are, high-level officials in the Trump administration, shall we say. They're saying, we're not going to tell you what we said to James Comey, and we're not going to tell you what we said to the president, and, maybe in private session. But, the private session is going to be with our staff. And so you've got some very frustrated Democrats, and then you've got some Republicans who are just trying to, get back to talking about Section 702. We want to reauthorize FISA, so we can spy on people and all this kind of stuff. And so it's, everybody was kind of expecting, frankly, I was too, expecting fireworks this morning. But I think it's becoming very clear within the Trump administration, to people in the Trump administration, like perhaps the four men who are testifying before Congress right now, here we are. Andrew McCabe is the director of the FBI, Admiral Michael Rogers, the director of the NSA, Rod Rosenstein is the deputy attorney general. He's, because Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III has recused himself from the so-called Russia investigation, and Dan Coates, the director of national intelligence. So these are the guys who are all basically saying, I'm sorry, we got nothing to say to you. Nope, not gonna go there. Not gonna have that conversation. Don't even think about it. Ain't gonna happen. And so we'll see where this goes. Meanwhile, there's a lot in the news, and that I want to share with you. Also today, we're going to have two different guys. Richard Clark is going to be in the office. Richard Clark, you'll recall, those of you who are listening to this program back in the, after the invasion of Iraq, when Richard Clark left the Bush administration, he was on this program a number of times talking about, how his hair was on fire and all these, they were all warning George W. Bush before 9/11, look out, look out, look out, Osama bin Laden is coming, look out. And George W. Bush was going, I think I'm going to go to Crawford, Texas for the longest vacation in the history of the presidency. So anyhow, he's got a new book out, and he's going to drop by the studio at the top of the next hour. Victoria Jones is going to be with us, talking about the British election, which is happening tomorrow, which really is kind of beginning tonight, our time. They're 5 hours ahead of us. And Charles Sauer will be with us in our third hour, and he and I are going to debate Karen Handel and John Ossoff's discussion. This is the election in Georgia to replace Tom Price. Their discussion about the minimum wage. So anyhow, that's how our day is going to go. There's a bunch of things that I wanted to talk with you about. ISIS or ISIL or Daesh groups have launched a deadly attack in Iran on the Iranian parliament and in a mausoleum. This from Reuters. Suicide bombers and gunmen attacked the Iranian parliament and the museum of Ayatollah Khomeini in Tehran on Wednesday, killing at least 12 people in a twin assault. And here's where it gets interesting, because remember, Trump just went to this region, just congratulated Saudi Arabia on what they're doing, and then just tweeted out trash talking against Qatar, which is where CENTCOM is based and where our largest air base is, out of which we and our allies fly our operations over Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen, other countries in the region. Okay, so anyhow, killing at least 12 people in a twin assault, which Iran's Revolutionary Guards, this would be basically the military part of Iran's government, blamed on regional rival Saudi Arabia. Islamic State claimed responsibility, released a video purporting to show gunmen inside the parliament building. They were the first claimed by the hardline Sunni militant group inside the tightly controlled Shiite Muslim community. So the Sunni-Shia war has now broken out in the open. Not that it really hadn't before. I mean, in a thousand smaller ways, and some fairly large ones actually. When the government of Saddam Hussein fell in Iraq, he was a Sunni. He was ruling a Shia majority country, which has now largely, at least economically, aligned itself with Iraq. Or with Iran, excuse me, although we continue to support Iraq. Figure that one out. I mean, this is just like, it's just... Anyway, the attackers dressed as women, these were men, burst through Parliament's main entrance in central Tehran. This according to the Deputy Interior Minister. One of them detonated a suicide vest in the Parliament. Iranian media said 4 people who had attacked Parliament were dead. The incident was over. At least 12 people were killed by the attackers. The second attacker was shot dead. So this, and this, they're saying the hardliners are very angry and will use every opportunity to grow in strength to isolate Rouhani. Rouhani is the more moderate president of Iran, who was just reelected by 78% of the people. And so, the extent to which this is going on and the extent to which our president, through his bumbling incompetence and lack of knowledge of this region, are making the world a more dangerous and less stable place is breathtaking. It's just breathtaking. Other news, Donald Trump has pitched a solar-powered border wall, so it pays for itself, right? Mexico said we're not going to pay for it. It's going to cost $20 billion. The Republicans are appropriating $20 million. That's enough to put some fence posts in, right? And so Steve Scalise, the Republican from Louisiana, he's the House majority whip. He says, one idea Trump is looking at is a wall that would actually function as a solar panel to ultimately pay for itself. So let me get this straight. Solar energy doesn't work, and it's a waste of time. We shouldn't be subsidizing solar. We shouldn't be promoting solar. We should be staying with 17th, 18th, 19th century fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas, except when the president wants a wall. Brilliant. Staying with those, ancient fuels, those anachronistic, out-of-date fuels, by the way, according to a new study from Princeton and Rutgers University. This is over at, I've got to turn on my, this is from The Guardian. I've got to turn on my, headers and footers, thank you. The headline, Rare U.S. Floods to Become the Norm If Emissions Aren't Cut, studies warn. This is out of Rutgers University and Princeton University. And they're looking not at 2100, like most of these studies have up till now, by which point, many of us will be dead, and our kids will be old people. But now they're looking at 2050. which is what, 33 years from now? If I'm doing my math in my head right. So they're looking at 2050. So people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, they'll probably still be around. And they're saying that the average risk of a 100-year flood. I was not in Portland in '96 for the 100-year flood, and that might have even been a 500-year flood. But it was just this massive flood. But we moved to Portland shortly after that, and the damage was just mind-boggling. So they're saying the risk of a 100-year flood will, by 2050, if we don't change the course of things, will increase 40-fold. That's a 4,000% increase, if I'm doing my math right. San Francisco and Seattle would both get 100-year floods every year. San Diego could expect 10 a year. These are floods that normally happen once every 100 years. Key West would be hit 11 times a year with a flood that typically you'd see once every 100 years. New York City would get a 100-year flood every 20 years. But by 2100, they would be getting a flood like that every month. Shut down the subways, shut down the infrastructure, everything. But the president says, hey, we don't need to do anything about, we don't have no stinking emissions problem. We'll just take it, withdraw. Meanwhile, Trump tweeted out this morning, which, by the way, raises a really interesting question. Trump tweeted out this morning that Christopher Wray is going to be the guy that he's going to put in charge of the FBI. Now, Christopher Wray has, a fairly distinguished career. He was overseeing the criminal division of the AG's office, the Attorney General's office under George W. Bush. He prosecuted Ken Lay. But his most recent gig was defending Chris Christie. Chris Christie and Bridgegate. And I think it's fairly clear to most people that Chris Christie should have been prosecuted for this. But somehow Chris Christie made sure that his underlings all went to jail, but he didn't. And so Christie says to Trump, one could infer, says to Trump, hey, if you don't want to go to jail, but you want your underlings to, here's your guy, Christopher Wray. So that's going to be an interesting one. More news on the U.S. officials scrambling to limit Donald Trump's damage with regard to his Qatar tweets. I want to get into what's going on with the latest privatization attempt. It has to do with right here in Washington, D.C. And Trump has just named this insane, well, we'll get to it after the break. Stick around. A lot going on.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be back with more right after this. And welcome back. Let's see here, Don in Seattle. Hey, Don, thanks for watching Free Speech TV. What's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Thanks for taking my call. Yeah, the recent visit by Trump to Saudi Arabia, I think there's something going on behind the scenes. I don't know, call it a gut thing or whatever. Do you recall in the early 70s the run-up that led to the brief war between Saudi Arabia and Israel, I think in 1973?
No, I don't.
But
I didn't know that there ever was a war between Israel and Saudi Arabia.
There was a war, the threat of war, and I think what the result of what's going on now is going to kind of repeat those events of those years that will result in, because near the end of that war, as I recall, the Saudis shut off the flow of oil to the Western world that nearly crippled the world economy and caused...
that happened after the Six-Day War in 1967.
Oh, okay. I was mistaken about that.
And then it happened again. It happened again in the early 70s because Nixon was president, and he put wage and price controls on as a result of that. And then Jerry Ford inherited the inflation from the increase in the price of oil as a result of the Arab oil embargo, and that was his whole whip inflation. Now everybody's wearing these win buttons.
Yeah.
Anyhow, where are you going with all this?
Well, I just think that this is going to affect the price of a barrel of oil, and we're going to see a dramatic skyrocketing price again, like we saw in the early 70s. When I remember around this era in the Seattle area, before that began, the price of a gallon of gas was like 25 cents a gallon, and then in less than 9 months, it went from that up to $1.50 a gallon, a 600% increase. And also I wanted to add to, I wanted to ask you if you recall on Trump's visit, was Tillerson with him on that visit to Saudi Arabia?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't know, it just sort of stinks to high heaven. There's something.
Well, Tillerson's been dealing with the Saudis forever. They know him. I mean,
Yeah.
he was the head of ExxonMobil. So.
And then, of course, Trump promised, a $400 billion American arms sale to the Saudis, and they've already started escalating their.
Well, it turns out that this is another story from the Washington Post this morning. There actually were no deals signed when Trump was there.
Oh, okay.
Everything that was signed was letters of intent. In other words, hey, let's have a conversation about having a deal. The one deal that was, when Trump was talking about how many billions of dollars we were going to make off this, the one deal that actually had been finalized was finalized in October of last year by President Obama.
Okay.
And that has yet to begin execution. But we're pouring gasoline, it's like you've got the original metaphor is two guys standing in a basement with gasoline up to their ankles, both holding a book of matches, right?
Right.
Well, extend that metaphor. It's not just two guys anymore. It's not like it's Israel and Saudi Arabia. It's now Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Qatar now, Iran, Israel. You got and all these different, and Libya and Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, and each one has their own issue, and they're all being contaminated by the aggressive export of Wahhabism by Saudi Arabia. And so now you've got like 20 guys standing in the basement with gasoline up to their ankles, and they've all got a book of matches in their hands. And Trump comes along and says, hey, let me pour another 100,000 gallons of gasoline into the basement. And so now they're in gasoline up to their waists. I mean, that's in my mind, that's what's going on. Don, I got to run. Thanks a lot for the call. We'll be back.
On April 15th.
Hi, I'm Heather with Free Speech TV. Your support, whether through giving of donations, volunteering, or even spreading the word, has made it possible for the only independent progressive news network to sustain for more than 20 years. Now, you can give to Free Speech TV through the Branch of Gratitude. This program is a sustainable way to give that reduces waste through paper mailing, postage, and staff hours. By choosing to participate in the Branch of Gratitude, you are joining hands with the socially conscious community and sending a message to the world that Free Speech TV is not only here to stay, it is here to thrive. Please call 877-378-8669 or go online to freespeech.org. Make a difference and join the Branch of Gratitude today.
Welcome back. So I was just kind of going through, I'm just, this whole pile of stuff that I wanted to talk about. I mentioned that the president has tweeted out that he is going to put Chris Christie's lawyer, who got Chris Christie off on the Bridgegate thing. Chris Christie was the governor. He was kind of the CEO of the state, just like the president is sort of the CEO of the country. He made sure that his underlings went to jail, and he didn't. The guy who made that happen, the lawyer who made that happen, is the guy that Chris Wray, that the president has tweeted this morning that he is going to put in charge of the FBI to replace James Comey. Now, interestingly enough, there's a fascinating piece in this morning's Washington Post by Holly Figueroa O'Reilly, in which she talks about how whenever Trump would tweet something, she would tweet back at him what an idiot he was, or a little more articulate than that, but basically, she thought that she says, I told him the Pope looked at him funny, stuff like that. Trump has blocked her tweet. And apparently, Trump has blocked a lot of people's tweets. Now, if it was you doing it or me doing it or somebody else doing it, you know, Twitter provides that function. It's like, you know, what's the big deal? But the president is asserting that his tweets from his Donald J. Trump account are the official statements of the president of the United States. Now, several of his spokespeople came out and said, no, these are not official statements. And then he came out and said, yeah, they are. So they are. Right? He's the president. And so what Holly O'Reilly is saying is, if these are official announcements and you've blocked me from seeing them, you're violating my constitutional rights. The subhead says the president can unblock me or see me in court. This is interesting. When reached by the Washington Post, White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer declined to comment on this story. Right. So, anyhow, that's, you know, I thought that was just absolutely fascinating. Major climate chain reaction. Greenland melting could devastate crops in Africa. Oh, we'll get to that in a little bit. I haven't had an opportunity to mark that up. Not sure where that came from. Here we go. The aqueduct. I was telling you about the Washington aqueduct. The Trump administration wants to sell the Washington aqueduct, stirring fears among some that the White House's passion for privatization, I'm quoting from Robert McCartney's piece in this morning's Washington Post, that the White House's passion for privatization could mean higher water bills for me, for the 1 million residents in the District of Columbia, Northern Virginia. This plan was buried in a few short lines in a budget proposal for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, 1,200-page budget proposal. And what's interesting, the Washington Aqueduct was authorized by Congress in 1852. This is pre-Civil War. Construction began in 1863. It went online in 1859. And began fully operating right after in 1864. So here we've got this thing. It's a National Historical Monument. It works just fine. It literally has been there for what, 150 years, something like that, 170 years. But and it doesn't cost anybody anything because, you know, we pay for it. I pay for it with my water bill. So divestiture, in fact, from the article in the Washington Post, divestiture and privatizing it would not save the federal government money on year-to-year costs because the aqueduct receives no federal subsidies. Payments by customers cover all its expenses for both operations and investments. But officials in the district in Arlington expressed concern that a private operator would jack up water rates to maximize profits. Well, that's the whole idea. That's what Trump wants and his billionaire buddies want. Oh, man. It's like, is nothing sacred? A study by Food and Water Watch. I'll tell you about this right after the sticker.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
I can tell you very quickly, privatized water utilities cost 59% more than government utilities. We'd see a $185 a year increase in our water bill. And welcome back to the Free Speech TV fundraising membership. Become part of the revolution and the resistance moment here. Your opportunity to call 877-378-8669 and make a contribution to Free Speech TV, this television network that is the little network that could and is. We are having an impact, and it really. Look back just like at the Bernie movement, you know. Might that have happened had Bernie not been on this program for 11 years, every single Friday, talking to people all across the United States? One of Bernie's top staffers told me that literally everywhere they went, all over the country, when these large crowds would show up, people would start yelling, "Brunch with Bernie." This is like, you know, which is not to take credit for Bernie and his phenomenon. Bernie is an amazing man and politician, and whether he'd ever been on my show or not, he may well have done exactly what he did. But we helped. And that's the point. And there's much more to do. I mean, we've got serious work ahead of us right now here in the United States, dealing with the crisis, basically, of a kleptocratic administration, a wholly sold-out Republican Party, a semi-corrupted Democratic Party, which is the predictable result of a corrupt political infrastructure that was created by a series of stupid Supreme Court decisions. And, you know, this stuff isn't going to get fixed by listening to the news from giant multinational corporations run by right-wing billionaires, which is basically what we've got. It's going to be fixed by people like you and me getting out there and getting active and waking up our friends and communicating, having both a dialogue and a news nexus like this network. So this is really important. 877-378-8669. Our goals are $10,000 a day to raise. That's not that much money, even at $100 a person, when you consider that we're in, I think, 50 million homes just on Dish and Direct, plus we're on cable systems. I believe we're in 60 million homes. Whatever the number is, it's pretty extraordinary. Obviously, not all those people are watching, but there's a lot. So anyhow, our goal of $10,000 a day, we hit 3,000 on Monday. We hit 6,000 yesterday. Thank you. I asked you, to step up, and a lot of people did. I asked the people at Free Speech TV who answer the phones, when they take the calls, I said, what's really hot? What are people? And they said, your book, What Would Jefferson Do? So we've slightly changed the order of things of the premiums that we're giving in the hopes of increasing somewhat the average gift, as it were. So with a $60 gift right now, you get the Pocket Constitution, and this is, a good and useful thing to have. It really is. Whether you get it here or elsewhere, it's, you should have this. And these cards published by the American Civil Liberties Union, two of them, either the Know Your Rights at Demonstrations and Protests or Know Your Rights at College for LGBT Students. So you get that with a $60 gift or $5 a month. Any of these can be, made monthly as well. With a $120 gift, you get Howard Zinn's book, The People's History of the United States, which is, one of the very best history books ever written about the United States. With a $240 gift, you get my book, What Would Jefferson Do? This is a book that I wrote after spending, probably at least 2 years reading these 10 volumes of Jefferson's stuff that came with his old house we bought in 1997 in Vermont. They were all water stained and unsaleable or usable, but they were still readable. And there's some great stuff in there. That's with our $240 gift. Plus, with $240, you get the Pocket Constitution, and you get the cards about how to know your rights, either at protests or for LGBT folks in college, and you get the Free Speech TV sticker. With a $360 gift, you get Howard Zinn's book, The People's History of the United States. You get a paperback that goes along with this, which is by a variety of other authors called The Voices of the People's History. It goes along, I guess, with people's history. You get the Pocket Constitution, and you get the Free Speech TV sticker. That's with the $360 gift. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Washington, D.C., and I'll take you to lunch. We'll have a pizza party. Sometimes we get a couple of people from Free Speech TV. Sometimes it's just one or two. It's always nice. I always have a good time. And I've met some just extraordinary people. And in fact, I think you've met some of them as well. So those are the gifts. Those are the different giving levels. And but the bottom line is not so much the gifts and the giving levels. It's that Free Speech TV is so important. It's this little network that runs on an annual budget that's a shoestring. It's a $3 million budget for an entire television network. We're trying to raise $300,000 in this fund drive. We need to raise $10,000 today. Please, your contribution is important. 877-378-8669. Please call. Thank you so much.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can support the Thom Hartmann Program and see video of our entire 3-hour show over at patreon.com/Thom Hartmann.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And it just goes on and on. Okay, Donald Trump has named a new top environmental attorney for the Department of Justice. The guy who's going to prosecute environmental crimes, right? If somebody's messing with the United States, whatever, this is, he's found somebody that he's going to put on to prosecute environmental crimes. And this guy is Jeffrey Bossert Clark. Now, who is Jeffrey Bossert Clark? Who is now going to be the top lawyer at the Department of Justice who's going to look into environmental crimes? Clark, this from InsideClimateNews.org. Clark, a partner in the Washington, D.C. office of Kirkland and Ellis, has represented the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in lawsuits challenging the federal government's authority to regulate carbon emissions. In court, he has repeatedly argued that it is inappropriate to base government policymaking on the scientific consensus presented by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC. Clark demanded in a 2010 blog posting on the EPA's endangerment finding, quote, "When did America risk coming to be ruled by foreign scientists and apparatchiks in the United Nations?" Clark also successfully defended British Petroleum, BP, in a legal challenge brought by Louisiana parishes over the company's multi-billion-dollar settlement of claims stemming from the Deepwater Horizon oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, according to his law firm. He was involved in the fight against the U.S. government to obtain documents regarding officials' deliberations over how fast the oil spill was flowing. Why is that important? Because the size of the spill determined how much BP was going to have to pay. So let's stop the government from knowing. This is the lawyer who did that, right? This is the lawyer this was what he was in charge of. He also served in the George W. Bush administration from 2001 to 2005 as Deputy Assistant Attorney General for the Environment and Natural Resources Division. Whew. It's like the old gang is back, right? The old, just kind of pollute the world. It's incredible. It's just incredible, everything that is going on. I just find it breathtaking. Not finally, actually, I still have even there's. It's an insanely busy news day, and none of this is being covered in the media because everybody's trying to, hoping that one of the, Mike Rogers or one of these guys, Dan Coates, Andrew McCabe, Mike Rogers or Rod Rosenstein, are going to somehow implicate Donald Trump in some sort of cover-up. And all of them are just going, zip, sorry, lips are zipped shut. We are, we're not going to take on the president. You're going to have to wait tomorrow for the guy he fired to do that, because we all still work for him. So none of these things that I'm talking about right now are being covered in our press because our corporate press, seems only capable of doing one thing at a time. But another thing that's really important, this happened last night in Kansas. You will recall back about 4 years ago, I think it was, that Sam Brownback, former senator from Kansas, got elected governor of Kansas. He said, "I'm going to prove that Reaganomics actually works. I'm going to prove it to you. And we're going to use Kansas as the laboratory to prove this." Now, he didn't use these exact words, but it's pretty close. And so he dropped the top income tax rate altogether. So the richest of the rich in Kansas, which happens to be the headquarters of Koch Industries, if my recollection is right, and where Charles Koch lives. So the richest of the rich in Kansas suddenly didn't have a top income tax bracket to pay in terms of state taxes. They paid the same taxes, the upper middle class, shall we say. But he also said if you run a privately held corporation, an LLC, then you don't have to pay any taxes at all as a corporation. Right? It just all passes through to your private personal tax, and which is we're lowering that rate, but you don't even have to pay state taxes on it. Doesn't even have to pass through to it does at the federal level, but not the state level. So I don't know how much of the hundreds of companies or the many companies that Koch Industries owns or is part of, but these are privately held companies. And Geez, something on my computer just went nuts. Excuse me. Let me see where the audio is coming from. Oh, it's coming out of the Washington Post. Okay, so I've got to kill my Washington Post page. Excuse me. So anyhow, Sam Brownback does this thing, and don't you hate it when these websites just automatically start playing video? I mean, it's like, I like having the Washington Post up so I can check and see what's going on in the news. But now I'm just, they do this, and I'm going to have to close the tab altogether and not have the Washington Post available to me when I'm doing the show. Anyhow, otherwise we get these strange voices coming out from the background. And I get it why websites do this, right? It engages people, it makes money, whatever. I think a lot of them are shooting themselves in the foot. Anyhow, speaking of shooting themselves in the foot, Sam Brownback cut those taxes, and what did it do? It threw Kansas into a crisis. They got about $1 billion budget shortfall. They've already had to cut a couple $100 million out of their education budget. Their schools are suffering. Their children are suffering. Their infrastructure is suffering. Their roads, the potholes aren't getting fixed. New infrastructure, new construction, new anything that might bring new business or encourage people to want to move to Canton. Forget about that. That ain't happening. And so and Brownback wants to keep doing this. He's just like, hey, I believe this stuff. Ronald Reagan convinced me. If you cut taxes, the economy improves. And Kansas, you just wait long enough. We've been doing this for 4 years now, and I realize it's been a disaster every year, but eventually it's going to kick in. Well, the Republicans who control the Kansas House and control the Kansas Senate, it takes 2/3 of them, so they need a few Democrats to help them out too. But it takes a 2/3 vote in both the House and Senate to overrule a veto. The House and Senate in Kansas passed a tax increase. They said, screw this. This doesn't work. We're not going to do this stupid Reaganomics experiment anymore at the expense of our state, just so Sam Brownback can, pacify the Koch brothers and he's probably got a 7-figure job waiting for him when he leaves the governorship. We're not going to do it anymore. We have to answer to the voters. And so they passed a tax increase, the Republicans in Kansas. Now, it was simply taking it back to where it used to be, but they passed it. Brownback vetoed it. They overrode his veto with a 2/3 vote. So here we have this story. This is from TPM by John Hanna. Legislators expect the changes to raise $1.2 billion in new revenue over 2 years to close projected budget shortfalls totaling $889 million through June 2019 and also provide additional funds for public schools, which, as I noted, have already been cut. And then we get a Republican. This is the Senate Majority Leader in Kansas. His name is Jim Deming. The Republican leader of the Senate, talking about this theology, this religious belief in trickle-down economics, in Reaganomics, in the 1980 primary when George Herbert Walker Bush was running against Ronald Reagan to be the nominee of the Republican Party. He obviously lost to Reagan. Reagan picked him as his vice president. They ran together. But when they were running against each other in the primary, George Herbert Walker Bush called Reagan's idea of trickle-down economics, supply-side economics, he called it voodoo economics. It's still voodoo economics. So the Republican Speaker of the Senate Majority Leader, the Republican Senate Majority Leader in Kansas, says Sam Brownback still believes in this, and that's okay. I don't. I have made many, many bad decisions in my business career, as many bad as good, but I've always backed up and mopped up my mess, and that's what I am doing now. And so what's going to happen is that the top tax rate is going to go up to 5.7% as opposed to 4.6% now, and privately held businesses no longer get an absolute free ride. And that's a pretty amazing thing when you think about it. I mean, the vote in the Senate, this is incredible. The vote in the Kansas Senate was 27-13 And the vote in the Kansas House, keep in mind, these were both Republican-controlled. This is the vote to override his veto of a tax increase. In other words, this is the vote to raise taxes on Kansans, on the richest of the Kansans. It doesn't raise taxes on anybody who's making less than a couple $1 million a year, but it's raising taxes on the Koch brothers. The Senate vote was 27-13. The House vote was 88-31. Amazing.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Senator Tom Holland, a Baldwin City Democrat, said, where's the common sense? We shouldn't have gotten on a crazy train. We should have gotten off this crazy train a long time ago. Yeah, you think? And welcome back. Boy, what a day. It's just remarkable what's going on. I will kind of tease this. I'll get to, let me share this with you. By the way, you're welcome to call on pretty much any topic we've talked about today. The number is 202-808-9925. This from The Guardian. From yesterday's Guardian, actually. The headline, U.S. officials scramble to limit Donald Trump's diplomatic damage over the Qatar tweets. And, basically it's talking about the fact that, Qatar is like, you look at our best buds in the region. Saudi Arabia, basically, we supplied them with weapons, they supplied us with oil. And it wasn't until George W. Bush wanted to invade Iraq that we had an air base in Saudi Arabia. And that air base in Saudi Arabia, this was George Herbert Walker Bush. That air base was used to stage raids against the Iraqi soldiers in Kuwait. You'll recall. This was during the George Herbert Walker Bush administration. This is when all this began. I mean, if you want to track back the instability in the Middle East, the insanity in the Middle East, it really began with George Herbert Walker Bush wanting to have a little war to help him get himself reelected. Basically, I mean, in 1992. That's what it all boils down to. He wanted a little war, like Maggie Thatcher's little war in the Falklands, like Ronald Reagan's little war in Grenada. These little wars really help presidents, right? They boost their popularity. They increase their probability of getting reelected. They're easy to win. Everybody goes rah, rah, rah. So he wanted to have a little war. He had, April Gillespie says to Saddam Hussein, well, if you're going to invade, Kuwait was slant drilling into the Iraqi oil fields and sucking this oil out. And it was angering Saddam Hussein. He was like, you can't do that. You're stealing our oil. And besides that, you used to be our 54th province. You used to be a state of this country. So we're going to take you back. And he was an ally of the United States. We were supplying him with weapons. Don Rumsfeld went over and sold him, poison gas that he was using against the Iranians during the Iraq-Iran war. Over 1 million people died on both sides. So, George Herbert Walker Bush says to Saddam Hussein, essentially, through his envoy, go ahead and attack Kuwait. He attacks Kuwait. All of a sudden, the Bush administration is, oh, my God, they're throwing babies out of incubators in Kuwait City. Turns out that was a lie. It was the Kuwaiti ambassador's daughter who was pretending to be a refugee or a nurse, testifying before Congress. But that little war of George Herbert Walker Bush's, that's what started it all. And that's how we got an Air Force base in Saudi Arabia, which was the reason that Osama bin Laden gave for why he came after us on 9/11, because we were defiling the holy land of his country. You get this? This sequence of events? So Saudi Arabia wasn't even, outside of that, and George W. Bush shut down the Air Force base after 9/11 because, Osama bin Laden got his way with Bush, right? Our main military friend in the region is Doha's Qatar. Doha's the capital city, Qatar. And Trump is trash tweeting them. The State Department's freaking out. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Let's pick up some phone calls here. Kevin in Suffolk, Virginia. Hey, Kevin, what's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing today?
Good. What's up?
Hey, this is I sit here and I watch this stuff. These open hearings, these closed hearings, these classified hearings. They build us up, and they get up there and they say nothing. My thing is this: it's the only question I have. Why they just don't go to a classified hearing, get what they need to get, and leave this? I hate to say it, alone. Because anytime they go in front of the public, they're not saying anything that the people are asking them. So why do they keep wasting our time? And I'm thinking like this: Comey is going to do the exact same thing tomorrow. They're building us up. Oh, Comey going to do this. Comey going to do that. No, because they feel they're loyal to, like you said, to their leader. That their dear
No, but see,
leader.
Comey was fired by Trump, so he's got a grudge, and so
But I hate to say, I hope
Trump
it's
called
not
him a
a grudge.
showboater and a
Right.
not a clown, a grandstander. Yeah.
Grandstander. Right. But my thing is this, and I don't think it should be he have a act to bear. He should be able to come out and say what he needs to say. But I'm saying is you don't think this is a waste of time with having these public hearings when it's not revealing anything? Because every time they ask somebody, even Comey said the same thing when he was in open.
Yeah, Kevin, I don't think the hearings are a waste of time. I think watching them on television is a waste of time. And I concluded that from watching them on television this morning and watching these guys basically say, no, I'm not going to tell you anything. And we can, in private session, we can talk. But then, the private session turns out it's going to be between staff members. So, we'll see where this goes. We'll see where it goes, Kevin. But, I think a lot of Americans share your frustration with not, knowing what the heck is going on. Kevin, thanks for the call. Denise in Calumet, Michigan. Hey, Denise, what's on your mind?
Hey, Tom. Good to talk to you again. I'm thinking, after watching what little I have of these hearings, because I can't stomach it, that patriotism at the highest level of our country is now gone, especially the Republican Party. And if they're blaming everything on, well, we've got to let Mueller do his investigation and all this other stuff. It's just sickening. Yeah. Why is everybody covering up for a president who's not being presidential?
Because they're scared to death of him.
And the only two countries he hasn't ticked off are Russia and Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, which should tell you something.
Insulted everybody else.
Yeah, yeah, and states that are major oil producers in the world, and Rex Tillerson and all this. I mean, there are a lot of questions that need to be answered. Denise, thank you for the call. Jeff in Sharpsburg, Georgia. Hey, Jeff, what's up?
Tom, how you doing?
Good. You wanted to get back to privatizing the FAA that we talked about yesterday?
Yes, sir. I've been in air traffic control for about 10 years, and nothing frustrates me more than hearing these politicians talk about something they know nothing about. Basically, you hear Ted Cruz on Fox Business talking about how this next gen and this privatization would shorten flight times. People don't understand that you can't land any more airplanes on one runway than we already do.
Right.
It's literally and physically impossible, and that would just jeopardize the safety of the system. So that's basically what I wanted to tell you.
Yeah, and not only that, yeah, you're absolutely right, Jeff. I mean, depending on the airport, you've got a certain amount of and the weather and everything else. You got a certain amount of spacing between airplanes that you've got to maintain. But beyond that, there were over 300,000 flight delays last year that were attributable to mechanicals or internal airline problems that had nothing to do whatsoever with air traffic control.
I can tell you, Tom. I can tell you, it's very rare the delays are caused by air traffic.
Right, and when they are, it's because of weather.
We can do. There's literally only so much that we can do. We don't have, now granted, there is plenty of staffing issues, and that's a whole other topic that's happening with all the firings that Reagan did back in the early 80s. And all the people that got hired now they're all retiring. We are in a staffing crisis. So yeah, there are situations where staffing is a reason for delays, but that's very few and far between.
Yeah,
it's definitely not our equipment.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm totally with you, Jeff. As a general aviation pilot, as a private pilot myself, I'm very familiar with what you guys do, and I'm very grateful for it. And you're doing a great job, Jeff. Thanks a lot for the call. Sheila in Aurora, Illinois. Hey, Sheila, what's up?
Hi, I love the idea of joining Twitter, which I stay away from like crazy, just so that I could aggravate Trump. And maybe if a whole bunch of us do that and then he blocks all of us, we can have a big lawsuit against him and force him to stop using Twitter for his.
Yeah, well, that's what this op-ed writer this morning in the Washington Post was basically advocating. And Sean Spicer says, no, I'm not going to talk about that. But I think it's an absolutely brilliant idea. It's very funny. Sheila, thanks. Thanks for validating that. Patrick in Los Angeles. Hey, Patrick, what's up?
Yeah, I was going to tell you about Brombeck, the state of Kansas, recently had their bond rating lowered by the major bond rate.
Oh, yeah. This has happened 3 times now in 4 years, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's now junk bond status is what it is, basically.
Yeah.
Or one step above it.
Yeah, he's just, by inflicting Reaganomics on Kansas, I'm sure the billionaires in Kansas were made out very well, thank you very much. But Kansas? No, not so much. They got very, very badly hurt. Yeah, thanks for reminding me of that, Patrick. I appreciate it. We got the smartest listeners on earth, I'm telling you. Kurt in Spokane, Washington. Hey, Kurt, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I was wondering if you wanted to discuss about the arms deal that Mr. Trump is making with Saudi Arabia.
It turns out there's no deal. It's just these were just letters of intent and inquiries and things like that. There were no deals signed.
That's good. That's good to hear.
It's all a scam. I mean, Trump is pretending to be president. He's a reality show producer. He's a reality show star. He is producing a reality show for us. There's no there. He's not done anything. His budget wasn't a budget. It was a set of bullet points. His tax plan, is a bunch of bullet points. He's done nothing. Well, actually, he does. He blew away the streams rule so the coal companies can dump their crap in the rivers, and he stopped Obama's clean power plant rule so that the electric utilities that burn coal can continue to poison Americans. The efficiency standards for cars, particularly with regard to diesel, which kills some 10 to 20,000 Americans every year, just by particulate pollution. He blew that up. I mean, he's making America dirtier and poorer. Yeah, but not much.
I agree.
Not much more than that. Yeah, Kurt, I got 1 minute. I want to get one more call in here before Richard Clark shows up. Chaz in Lakewood, Washington. Hey, Chaz, what's up?
Hey, you're whipping through the callers, and I'll see if I can help with that.
Well, you got 40 seconds.
Night, Denny Heck had a telephonic town hall for him and never got around to my question, which was how many different investigations are happening in D.C. right now with election tampering, the Comey dismissal, Nunez's interference? I wondered if you could answer that question, Tom.
I have no idea, Chaz, but, not enough. I think that there needs to be a solid, unimpeachable, external to the government investigation, a 9/11 style commission that owes nothing to anybody and has no axe to grind and is composed of people who are not in the middle of their career paths, who will sit down and actually look at what's going on and will have access to all the classified information and can tell us all definitively what the hell's going on. Chaz, thanks a lot for the call. We really need this. We'll be right back. Stick around. Richard Clark is going to do this.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by EcoWine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, EcoWine.com. Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242 or visit tomsbeets.com. And welcome back to the Free Speech TV fundraising membership. Become part of the revolution and the resistance moment here. Your opportunity to call 877-378-8669 and make a contribution to Free Speech TV, this television network that is the little network that could and is. We are having an impact, and it really. Look back just like at the Bernie movement. Might that have happened had Bernie not been on this program for 11 years, every single Friday, talking to people all across the United States? One of Bernie's top staffers told me that literally everywhere they went, all over the country, when these large crowds would show up, people would start yelling, "Brunch with Bernie." This is like, which is not to take credit for Bernie and his phenomena. Bernie is an amazing man and politician, and whether he'd ever been on my show or not, he may well have done exactly what he did. But we helped. And that's the point. And there's much more to do. I mean, we've got serious work ahead of us right now here in the United States, dealing with the crisis, basically, of a kleptocratic administration, a wholly sold-out Republican Party, a semi-corrupted Democratic Party, which is the predictable result of a corrupt political infrastructure that was created by a series of stupid Supreme Court decisions. And this stuff isn't going to get fixed by listening to the news from giant multinational corporations run by right-wing billionaires, which is basically what we've got. It's going to be fixed by people like you and me getting out there and getting active and waking up our friends and communicating, having both a dialogue and a news nexus like this network. So this is really important. 877-378-8669. Our goals are $10,000 a day to raise. That's not that much money, even at $100 a person, when you consider that we're in, I think, 50 million homes just on Dish and Direct, plus we're on cable systems. I believe we're in 60 million homes. Whatever the number is, it's pretty extraordinary. Obviously, not all those people are watching, but there's a lot. So anyhow, our goal of $10,000 a day, we hit $3,000 on Monday. We hit $6,000 yesterday. Thank you. I asked you, to step up, and a lot of people did. I asked the people at Free Speech TV who answer the phones, when they take the calls, I said, what's really hot? What are people? And they said, your book, What Would Jefferson Do? So we've slightly changed the order of things of the premiums that we're giving in the hopes of increasing somewhat the average gift, as it were. So with a $60 gift right now, you get the Pocket Constitution, and this is, a good and useful thing to have. It really is. Whether you get it here or elsewhere, it's, you should have this. And these cards published by the American Civil Liberties Union, two of them, either the Know Your Rights at Demonstrations and Protests or Know Your Rights at College for LGBT Students. So you get that with a $60 gift or $5 a month. Any of these can be, made monthly as well. With a $120 gift, you get Howard Zinn's book, The People's History of the United States, which is, one of the very best history books ever written about the United States. With a $240 gift, you get my book, What Would Jefferson Do? This is a book that I wrote after spending, probably at least 2 years reading these 10 volumes of Jefferson's stuff that came with his old house we bought in 1997 in Vermont. They were all water-stained and unsaleable or usable, but they were still readable. And there's some great stuff in there. That's with our $240 gift. Plus, with $240, you get the Pocket Constitution, and you get the
cards about how to know your rights, either at protests or for LGBT folks in college, and you get the Free Speech TV sticker. With a $360 gift, you get Howard Zinn's book, The People's History of the United States. You get a paperback that goes along with this, which is by a variety of other authors called The Voices of the People's History. It goes along, I guess, with people's history. You get the Pocket Constitution, and you get the Free Speech TV sticker. That's with a $360 gift. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Washington, D.C., and I'll take you to lunch. We'll have a pizza party. Sometimes we get a couple of people from Free Speech TV. Sometimes it's just one or two. It's always nice. I always have a good time. And I've met some just extraordinary people. And in fact, I think you've met some of them as well. So those are the gifts. Those are the different giving levels. And but the bottom line is not so much the gifts and the giving levels. It's that Free Speech TV is so important. It's this little network that runs on an annual budget that's a shoestring. It's a $3 million budget for an entire television network. We're trying to raise $300,000 in this fund drive. We need to raise $10,000 today. Please, your contribution is important. 877-378-8669. Please call. Thank you so much.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and I'm super pleased, honored to have in the studio with me Richard A. Clark. He is the CEO of Good Harbor Security Risk Management. He served 3 consecutive presidents in the capacities of Special Assistant to the President, Global Affairs, Special Assistant to the President, Cyberspace, and National Coordinator of Security and Counterterrorism. And he's the author of other books prior to this as well, but his most recent, Warnings, Finding Cassandras to Stop Catastrophes. It's from Warnings. The website is warningsbook.net, if you'd like to check it out. And you probably remember Richard Clark. He's been a guest on this program probably at least a half a dozen, maybe more times over the years, probably closer to a dozen. Mm-hmm. Going back to your concerns right before 9/11, that 9/11 was going to happen, and your attempts to warn the Bush administration that were ignored. And this book, first of all, Richard Clark, welcome to the program.
Oh, it's great to be with you in person finally.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. So if we could just kind of set the frame, because this book is about, let's pay attention to people essentially like Richard Clark. Let's pay attention to the people who were saying, hey, look out, something's going to happen. And so you want to start with your story, mm-hmm. how you became a Cassandra?
Well, this book is not about me. I wrote Against All Enemies about my experience. That was my first book. This is number 8. But I did have a period in the Bush administration when I was warning them, and I thought the evidence was compelling, and they weren't paying attention. And I didn't get that. I couldn't understand why not. And so after some years went by and I had the opportunity, I asked a few people, have you ever noticed this is a phenomenon? After every big disaster, there's an investigation. I had the 9/11 Commission then interrogate me. And I think their report exonerated me and made it pretty clear that what I was saying was right. But there's always an investigation, and the investigation usually shows, hey, there was that person who was warning in advance, who was an expert, who had data, and they were ignored. And so I've asked my friends, did you ever notice that? And they say, yeah, well, it happened in Katrina, it happened in Fukushima, it happened in Bernie Madoff. And I thought, wait a minute, is there a thing here? Is this a phenomenon? And does it span different fields? It's not just intelligence and security issues. It happens in finance. It happens in science. It happens in engineering. It happened with the Challenger space shuttle.
That's right. There was a guy warning about the O-rings, right?
Right up to the morning, up to that morning, and for weeks prior. So why is it when experts have evidence and they present it that a disaster is about to happen, why is it they're ignored? That's what the book is about. And the question in the book is, if we can find these experts after the fact, can we find them before the fact?
Well, it's a, and I want to explore that question with you, but it's also not a new question. I mean, we talk about Cassandra. Cassandra, as I recall, was an ancient Greek story. Isn't that about a 3,000-year-old story?
It's a 3,000-year-old story about a woman who was cursed by the gods in Troy. And the curse was she could see the future, which doesn't sound like a curse. Like, who wouldn't want to see the future? But the curse part of it was no one would believe her when she warned them about what was going to happen in the future. So she went crazy because no one would pay any attention to her. I thought, yeah, I get that. You could easily go crazy.
Yes.
And yeah, throughout history there have been Cassandras. Winston Churchill, when we talk in the book, Winston Churchill was by his contemporaries called a Cassandra before World War II.
Well, he was not unique in that or alone in that.
No.
And the people calling the Cassandras, I mean, here in the United States, you had Charles Lindbergh, running around going, there's nothing to worry about, everything's fine. In fact, there's an amazing book. My dad gave it to me for my birthday years ago by Rex Stout, who at the time was the most widely published author in the United States. He did the Nero Wolfe series.
Mm-hmm.
He had 73 million books in print.
Oh.
This was published in just after World War II. He was the head of the propaganda board for Roosevelt to keep America pumped up, right, for the war effort. And it's called The Illustrious Dunderheads, and it's a collection of speeches on the floor of the House and Senate, all of them saying, there's nothing to worry about. We can get along with Mr. Hitler. Yeah. This is crazy. Why are you guys all getting all upset?
In the face of overwhelming evidence.
Yes.
Yeah. And so we ask in the book, why do people reject evidence? Well, one reason is the event they're talking about is outlandish. It's something that's huge and would have an enormous magnitude effect, and no one wants to deal with that. They think that perhaps by denying its truth, it won't happen. This is all subliminal. It's all subconscious. The other thing is the event has never happened before. If it's never happened before, no matter how evident it is it's about to happen, again, subconsciously people think, I don't have to worry about this because that's never happened.
Right.
Well, history, as you can see, history is a list of things that never happened before. They're happening for the first time. Every day we're having things happen for the first time. And yet people reject predictions based on this. What we're really talking about here are outlier experts, people who see things before the other experts. Jim Hansen on climate change is in the book in two regards. One, he saw climate change in the 1980s and was suppressed by the two Bush administrations. But now Hansen is again an outlier because he's predicting sea level rise will be faster and higher than the accepted wisdom.
And the IPCC has been proven wrong by being too conservative, too careful,
over
too cautious.
And over and over again.
With every single report. I mean, without exception.
Right. And so last week we had this EPA director under Trump quoting James Hansen as saying, well, I don't like the Paris Agreement.
He was misquoting him.
Of course he was. They misquote people all the time. He was misquoting him because what Hansen said was, I don't like the Paris Agreement because it's not tough enough.
Right.
It will not stop the sea level rise. And if Hansen's models, which are complex mathematical models about sea level rise, are true, it will not be linear. There's a feedback loop on the glaciation melting and causing pools of water under the glaciers. We're talking about 6-meter rise by the end of the century. I mean, there are children alive today who will see most of Florida underwater if Jim Hansen's right.
And much of Washington, D.C., and much of New York, and much of L.A., and much of San Francisco, and it just goes on and on and on. It's absolutely right.
But you can see why people don't want to believe him, right? It doesn't fit with their ideology. Because if you believed him, you would have to do things like big government response.
Yeah.
And you would have to do things that are far more ambitious than Paris. People don't want to do that in this town, and all the Republicans don't want to do anything at all. And therefore, they just don't want to believe it.
Well,
maybe if they don't believe it, it won't happen.
Well, yeah, and you said this is kind of wired into the psychology of the human race that we don't want to believe these things, and then there's also if it's only a small possibility that it'll happen, and it's going to be an enormous hassle to prevent it from happening, then why should we worry about this? These are called high impact, low probability events.
And the response, the rational response to a high impact, low probability event is to hedge your bets.
Right.
Number one. And number two, keep it under really tight surveillance so that when the evidence starts piling up that it might be right, you increase your hedge against it. Well, the evidence, since I wrote the book a year ago, it just came out last week, but publishing industry is slow, as you know. The evidence has piled up enormously in the last year that Hansen's right.
Yeah.
And more and
if
more,
anything, he's conservative too.
More and more experts are moving over to his prediction. The IPCC, the UN body, is still back at 1 meter by 2100.
Yeah, well, they're stuck with a consensus model as part of their problem.
Well, they also, when I talk to people who disagree with Hansen and say, well, what's wrong with his data? They say, well, he hasn't used the scientific method. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? Well, we need replicable studies. I said, what do you want him to do? Melt Greenland a few times before you believe it?
Right. Yeah, it's.
We call that, in the book, we call that scientific reticence. When the scientists insist on some sort of rigor, that means that you can't know if it's right or not until it's too late.
Right. We're talking with Richard A. Clarke. He is the author of a brand new book called Warnings, Finding Cassandras to Stop Catastrophes, written with R.P. Eddy. And the website for the book is warningsbook.net. And
there's a lot of the book available for free at that website. You can read excerpts on most of the book.
That's great. How, from the viewpoint of a Cassandra yourself, you were in the Bush administration and you were saying there's something going to happen here. And I'm guessing that probably a third of our audience anyway was not paying attention or was too young or whatever. I mean, that was quite some time ago, 15, 16 years ago. In the minute or so before we hit a break here, can you kind of recap what happened?
Well, so the outgoing Clinton administration told the incoming Bush administration, your number one issue to worry about, your number one threat to national security is bin Laden and al-Qaeda. They didn't believe that. They had been out of office for 8 years. They hadn't been focusing on it. They came in with their own agenda, which was Iraq and China and Russia, big state things. And we said, no, transnational issues are about non-state actors. This is going to happen. And they didn't want to hear about it. And they delayed. I asked for urgent meetings right after the inauguration. They delayed those meetings until September, in fact, a week before 9/11.
In fact, Dick Cheney was given 2 jobs. One was to be the
energy czar.
And which he got to right away, by carving up Iraq in these maps of, and then his second job was to be in charge of looking out for 9/11. Essentially, was it not?
He was asked.
And that was the meeting that happened in September.
He was asked to worry about Homeland Security. Which he didn't really do.
Yeah, it's a real tragedy. So when you went to the folks in the Bush administration and said, the Clintons were right, these guys are coming after us, what, they just look at you blank? Did they threaten you?
They kind of looked at me with a look like, we thought we knew you, we thought we liked you, but you're talking like a crazy guy. And we'll get to you. Get in the queue. We'll get to you.
You had colleagues who were saying the same thing, though.
I had the CIA director who was saying the same thing. And the problem was, in part, the CIA director, George Tenet, and I were holdovers from the Clinton administration. And if Clinton said white, they said black.
So it just got politicized.
It did.
That is so tragic. So tragic. Richard Clarke is with us. He is the author of a new book, Warnings, Finding Cassandras to Stop Catastrophe. We'll be back with a little more of our conversation with Richard Clarke.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be back with Richard Clarke in just a moment. And welcome back. We're still here with Richard Clark, and you're looking over the illustrious Dunderheads. It's an amazing book. I mean, you can buy them online for, I don't know, $60, $80, something like that. And it's such a lesson from history.
In part, it's a lesson that a foreign state tried to manipulate our domestic politics.
How so?
Well, so I was just reading a page about how the Nazis were trying to engage in the United States to cause dissension between whites and blacks, between the North and the South.
Oh, and the Boons were all over the place, the German Boons.
Right. So maybe Russia interfering in our domestic politics is not a first.
Oh, I would be amazed if it was. I would tell you, I mean, not to echo President Putin, but we've been engaging, we've been messing in other people's politics forever, and we're not the only power that does that.
Right, but that doesn't mean they should do it to us.
No, I agree. I totally agree. And this is why we need an independent commission to find out what the hell's going on.
I agree.
And go forward with that. So, of the stories in warnings, finding Cassandras to stop catastrophes, and the spook, the invasion of Kuwait, was that? Tell us about this story.
So,
because I was ranting at the end of the last hour about how that was the beginning of everything, in my opinion.
July 1990. Everybody's out of town in the first Bush administration. Everybody's on vacation. Cheney and Baker were off in Mongolia shooting endangered species. And everybody was on vacation. The president was in Maine. And intelligence begins to pour in that it looks like Iraq is going to invade Kuwait. But everybody looking at that intelligence, except one guy, says, that can't be true. That's never happened before. No Arab state has ever invaded another Arab state. No war in the Middle East has ever occurred in August when it's 130 degrees in the desert. This is not something on our radar. It's not something on our agenda. No. This is just saber rattling. And the expert says, saber rattling? They're actually trying to hide the fact that they're doing it. They're going to extraordinary measures to hide their military maneuvers. There's only one reason for that. They're going to do it. And
they'd already tried it with Iran.
They had already tried it with Iran and killed 1 million people over the course of 8 years in the process. At that point in time, had the president, we now know because finally Saddam Hussein was interrogated, and we know what he said. If the president of the United States had called him that last week in July and said, Saddam, don't you dare think about invading and occupying another country, he wouldn't have done it. He was shocked that we cared. He was shocked that we were upset.
Yeah.
And as he said in the interrogation, if I thought you were going to move a 500,000-man army to the Middle East in response, I wouldn't have done it. Right. So had we listened to that Cassandra, none of this series of dominoes would have fallen.
Yeah. And I keep going back to this, Saudi Arabia gave us an Air Force base to stage out of, and bin Laden in his 1998 interview, the piece that was in the New York Times, said that he was going to attack us because we had an Air Force base on sacred Saudi soil.
Well, 22 Air Force bases to be exact.
Oh, really? I thought it was one major one. Yeah. And Bush finally shut those down in, I think, 2005.
Well, much later,
We got it. We're hitting it. We'll be ready.
Hi, I'm Valerie with Free Speech TV. We're proud to provide you with independent, unfiltered news and documentaries. And as our valued viewer, you can help us continue bringing Free Speech TV well into the future. Join our Pearly Gate Rebels, our planned giving program. Your gift of any size will help ensure democracy endures through an informed citizenry. You can donate property, money, or assets. It's easy. My spouse and I are proud Pearly Gate Rebels. We're doing our part to ensure that Free Speech TV will be here to deliver thought-provoking news and information well into the future. Join us. Call 877-378-8669 or email me at valerie@freespeech.org. Rebel against media owned by billionaires and become one of our pearly gate rebels today.
Welcome back. Richard Clark in the studio with us. Brilliant, noted, well-respected national security expert, one of my heroes, one of my personal heroes. And he has a new book out. It's called Warnings, Finding Cassandras to Stop Catastrophe. Absolutely brilliant book. And we were talking about the fellow who was warning about Saddam Hussein. We could go through some other examples in here, and I'd love to do that. But the one question I haven't asked, and I don't want, because we only have a few minutes left, I don't want this half hour to slide by without asking it, is how do, what's your call for action? How do we find these Cassandras? How do we motivate, in Europe, they've got the precautionary principle. I mean, at least that's a step in the direction of being worried about or dealing with high impact, low probability situations. We don't have anything like that in the United States. In fact, we ridicule it.
We don't. And we don't have any institution, either in the government or outside the government, that looks for these people. And if we only rely on experts in the field, experts in whatever field is involved, they always reject these guys. Why? Because the Cassandra is the expert who sees it before they do, before the other ones do. So what we call for in the book is a multidisciplinary, small team of experts to actually go out and scan the horizon for these people, bring them in, listen to them, look at their evidence, and call in other experts to look at their evidence. We're also calling for people who think they know of a Cassandra to tell us, and we'll try to get them some publicity.
So are you suggesting that, like, the government should create a cabinet-level office of threat assessment?
Not necessarily cabinet level, but, a small office of threat assessment that can look across all kinds of threats.
Interdisciplinary.
If you know of a Cassandra, an expert in the field predicting a disaster and being ignored, tell me. And go to findingcassandra.com and tell me, and we will try to give them publicity.
You have that website?
We do, findingcassandra.com.
Oh, really? Yeah. So you're actually putting into place your own suggestions.
Well, no one else will, right? So
I think that's brilliant.
We're starting out. We're going to put a panel of experts together, and if listeners think they have an expert in a field who is warning about a disaster and is being unheeded, let me know.
Well, let me give you one to start with. Professor Peter Wadhams. I interviewed him last week in San Diego, and he's very concerned about. Here's his. I can give that to you later, but I want to keep a copy of it. But very concerned about. He's the world's leading expert on sea ice, and what he's saying is that the loss of albedo from the open ocean is being estimated as 15% of industrial emissions. He said it's actually 50%. And it's going to have massive impact. It's going to be triggering within the next decade, triggering these feedback loops. So anyhow.
And among other things, we'll stop the Gulf Stream and the Atlantic Current.
There you go.
Which totally changes the environment.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
So get the book, Warnings, Finding Cassandras to Stop Catastrophes, Richard Clark, and check out warningsbook.net and
findingcassandras.com.
Thank you. Thank you. And welcome back to the Free Speech TV fundraising membership. Become part of the revolution and the resistance moment here. Your opportunity to call 877-378-8669 and make a contribution to Free Speech TV, this television network that is the little network that could and is. We are having an impact, and it really. Look back just like at the Bernie movement. Might that have happened had Bernie not been on this program for 11 years, every single Friday, talking to people all across the United States? One of Bernie's top staffers told me that literally everywhere they went, all over the country, when these large crowds would show up, people would start yelling, "Brunch with Bernie." This is like, which is not to take credit for Bernie and his phenomenon. Bernie is an amazing
man and politician, and whether he'd ever been on my show or not, he may well have done exactly what he did. But we helped, and that's the point. And there's much more to do. I mean, we've got serious work ahead of us right now here in the United States, dealing with the crisis, basically, of a kleptocratic administration, a wholly sold-out Republican Party, a semi-corrupted Democratic Party, which is the predictable result of a corrupt political infrastructure that was created by a series of stupid Supreme Court decisions. And, you know, this stuff isn't going to get fixed by listening to the news from giant multinational corporations run by right-wing billionaires, which is basically what we've got. It's going to be fixed by people like you and me getting out there and getting active and waking up our friends and communicating, having both a dialogue and a news nexus like this network. So this is really important. 877-378-8669. Our goals are $10,000 a day to raise. That's not that much money, even at $100 a person, when you consider that we're in, I think, 50 million homes just on Dish and Direct, plus we're on cable systems. I believe we're in 60 million homes. Whatever the number is, it's pretty extraordinary. Obviously, not all those people are watching, but there's a lot. So anyhow, our goal of $10,000 a day, we hit 3,000 on Monday. We hit 6,000 yesterday. Thank you. I asked you, to step up, and a lot of people did. I asked the people at Free Speech TV who answer the phones, when they take the calls, I said, what's really hot? What are people? And they said, your book, What Would Jefferson Do? So we've slightly changed the order of things, of the premiums that we're giving, in the hopes of increasing somewhat the average gift, as it were. So with a $60 gift right now, you get the Pocket Constitution, and this is, a good and useful thing to have. It really is. Whether you get it here or elsewhere, it's, you should have this. And these cards published by the American Civil Liberties Union, 2 of them, either the Know Your Rights at Demonstrations and Protests or Know Your Rights at College for LGBT Students. So you get that with a $60 gift or $5 a month. Any of these can be, made monthly as well. With a $120 gift, you get Howard Zinn's book, The People's History of the United States, which is, one of the very best history books ever written about the United States. With a $240 gift, you get my book, What Would Jefferson Do? This is a book that I wrote after spending, probably at least 2 years reading these 10 volumes of Jefferson's stuff that came with his old house we bought in 1997 in Vermont. They were all water-stained and unsaleable or usable, but they were still readable. And there's some great stuff in there. That's with our $240 gift. Plus, with $240, you get the Pocket Constitution, and you get the cards about how to know your rights, either at protests or for LGBT folks in college, and you get the Free Speech TV sticker. With a $360 gift, you get Howard Zinn's book, The People's History of the United States. You get a paperback that goes along with this, which is by a variety of other authors, called The Voices of the People's History. It goes along, I guess, with people's history. You get the Pocket Constitution, and you get the Free Speech TV sticker. That's with a $360 gift. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Washington, D.C., and I'll take you to lunch. We'll have a pizza party. Sometimes we get a couple of people from Free Speech TV. Sometimes it's just 1 or 2. It's always nice. I always have a good time. And I've met some just extraordinary people. And in fact, I think you've met some of them as well. So those are the gifts. Those are the different giving levels. And but the bottom line is not so much the gifts and the giving levels. It's that Free Speech TV is so important. It's this little network that runs on an annual budget that's a shoestring. It's a $3 million budget for an entire television network. We're trying to raise $300,000 in this fund drive. We need to raise $10,000 today. Please, your contribution is important. 877-378-8669. Please call. Thank you so much.
to hear that clip again? Subscribe to the Thom Hartmann Program on YouTube to see all your favorite show highlights.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And there's an election happening late tonight, early tomorrow in the UK. Theresa May, the current prime minister, is kind of, well, let's let Victoria Jones, our friend and typically our reporter for Talk Media News, but herself of British ancestry, I guess would be a way to say it, but a U.S. citizen. Tell the story. Victoria, welcome back to the program.
Thank you very much.
It is always so nice to talk with you, and particularly on these topics where I frankly, I feel like I should know a lot more and I don't. So tell me about, real quickly, why did Theresa May call for this essentially snap election?
The snap election, which surprised everybody because they had an election 2 years ago, and everybody went, oh, for crying out loud.
Right.
The last thing we need. Well, because Theresa May, who was not elected by the people, you remember, she was elected by her party when David Cameron, the previous prime minister, stepped down ignominiously after he lost the Brexit vote.
Oh, that's right. That's right. He had said, if this country goes for Brexit, I'm out of here. Right. And yeah, okay.
And unlike politicians in some countries who don't keep their word, in Britain, if you do that kind of thing, you actually have to go.
So she was sort of like Jerry Ford after Nixon.
Yeah, she was elected. In England, the prime minister, who is a member of parliament, is elected within the party. And she wasn't really expected to be elected. She's the former Home Secretary, which is the Interior Minister, which we'll come to shortly, which is responsible for borders, immigration control, terrorism, things like that. And she's quite a good politician. She's 59 years old, and she's been in politics for a good 20 years. Anyway, she emerged as the front runner through various reasons, and she became the prime minister. And she needs to negotiate Brexit, which she was against and is now for. And she thought that she had a majority, not a very big majority, but she was doing really well in the polls, 20 points ahead. And she thought, hey, I'm going to have a snap election, 20 points ahead. I can get a really big majority because I need a big majority. I need my party behind me for these negotiations with Europe, and I can do it. Well, it didn't work out like that because she has campaigned very robotically. She's refused to debate with her rivals, and so she's been called a coward publicly on television. And then she said that, you know, that she's strong and she's not for turning and all these things. And then she's had to turn because some of her policies, one in particular, the dementia tax, has been so unpopular that she withdrew it. And then, of course, we've had 2 or 3 terrorist attacks in the last 3 months.
And several of the terrorists were known to her when she was the Home Secretary, and it was her job to put her thumb on these guys.
Right.
And that doesn't help her either. Now, her principal opponent in this is Jeremy Corbyn, who is, sort of the Bernie Sanders of the UK. Would that be a reasonable characterization?
Yes, he's a member of what is known in the UK as the loony left.
Okay.
Affectionately known as the loony left, but he's a 68-year-old, bearded, rumpled guy who is no longer rumpled for the campaign. He now wears blue suits and ironed shirts, which is noted because he didn't used to. And he's very much to the left of his party. Also, accidentally became leader of his party. He was put in for the leadership position, really sort of to swell the numbers and almost as a joke, but became the leader. And nobody expected him to do anything. And in fact, he did get a no confidence vote by his party not very long ago. But what's happened is that young people have really become very excited by him. He's speaking to them. People are getting pretty sick and tired of the cuts and the austerity of the Conservatives, known as the Tories, particularly to things like the health service, senior services,
public education,
public education, any number of things. And he is promising to nationalize the rail system again, which people are really sick and tired of having problems with, and do a lot of things. And he's speaking to people, and he's saying that it's going to be government for the many, not for the few.
Now, one of the things that has happened in the UK since Rupert Murdoch first showed up there is, which was back, maybe 30 years ago?
Yeah.
Is that the media in the UK has gone from being largely independent. I mean, the Times of London was always kind of regarded as like the New York Times, sort of the paper of record and, notoriously down the middle and all this kind of thing. Murdoch now owns that. He owns a bunch of other newspapers, and not just him. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that with the exception of The Guardian, virtually all of the major newspapers in the UK are owned by people or groups or corporations that have a right-wing agenda and that spin them hard right. And if that media landscape, if that's an accurate description of the British media landscape, I'm just astonished that Jeremy Corbyn is within spitting distance of, in the polls, of Theresa May.
Yeah, it's really interesting. The Daily Mirror also leans left, and The Independent is pretty independent, but nobody reads it, so it doesn't really matter. Right. That's right. It is very surprising, and it is really a sign, I think, of discontent with Theresa May and of a sort of insurgency towards Jeremy Corbyn. And of discontent with Theresa May and of Tory policies. The difficulty, of course, is, and it is in many countries, including this one, is who is actually going to show up at the polls.
Right.
Young people in the UK are much, much less likely to vote, even though 1 million young people have registered to vote just since the election campaign began.
Well,
so will they vote tomorrow? That's the big question. And the polls over there, which are notoriously unreliable, do have the election tightening a great deal from 20 points down to between 12 and 1 point.
Yeah. And I saw the one this morning from the various retailers where they were doing polls of people. That was fascinating. Would it be fair to say, Victoria Jones, that what we're looking at in the UK is not dissimilar to what we looked at in the United States in the last presidential election, and that is a broad dissatisfaction with neoliberal policies, with these essentially austerity policies, semi-libertarian policies that were introduced by Margaret Thatcher in the UK and Ronald Reagan in the United States, that the more left-leaning parties, Labour in the UK, the Democratic Party in the United States, moved to the right to accommodate those. In the United States, it was the DLC and all that sort of stuff. In the UK, I'm not sure if there was a mechanism. It was New Labour, actually. It was Tony Blair declaring New Labour. We're going to reinvent it as kind of the little more conservative version. And it's not working. It's reducing. It's increasing inequality. Inequality in the UK is close to levels of the United States, which are among the worst in the world, the developed world anyway. And there's this general sense that this was a failed experiment that was started in arguably 1978.
I think that's true. I think it's true that that movement by Labour did not work long term, but I think also that some of the more far left positions of Labour have also not worked, and Labour's struggling to find itself, but is starting to do so, and championing the National Health Service, for example, talking about renationalizing the rail services, talking about Britain for the many, not for the few, talking about taxation, even though its taxation plan doesn't add up. Well, at least they've got a taxation plan. The Conservatives' taxation plan sort of doesn't even seem to exist as far as people who are experts in taxation are concerned.
Interesting. So, do you have any predictions? And also, when can we expect to know something tomorrow?
Well, the polls are open from 7 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. So it's really a long time. The BBC will do its first exit poll at 5 o'clock Eastern, our time, the minute the polls close. So we should have an idea then. No exit polling is allowed until that time. So 5 o'clock Eastern should get a sense of it. I think we'll probably start to get results early Friday morning. My prediction is if young people show up and vote, we should get a much closer result. I do not think there's going to be a hung parliament, which means there's no majority. I think that's unlikely. Right. I think that the polls are, again, wrong. I don't think she's going to get a sweep. I do not.
Yeah, interesting. And are they voting on paper in the UK these days?
I don't know.
Okay.
Haven't done it for a while.
Okay, that's right. You're a U.S. citizen. Victoria Jones, always great talking with you, Victoria. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And we'll be back in just a minute with more of your calls, and we're going to be checking with Dr. And welcome back. David in Los Angeles, watching us on Free Speech TV. Hey, David, what's on your mind today?
Good morning. How you doing, Tom?
Great. What's up?
Well, that was an interesting conversation you had about the British elections, and you tied it in with what happened with our elections, our past election. Well, my points that I would like to make this morning, if I can, is that, one, the plutocrats and the corporatists of the world have pretty much united. Well, we have a corporatist party here under the label of Republican has already pretty much thrown their lot in with the corporatists of this country.
Right.
So they don't really represent the people. They represent corporate interests. And hence the head of Trump on their party is perfect. And so I'm suggesting, like what the conversation you had with the young lady from Great Britain.
With Victoria Jones?
Yes, sir. I mean, this is universal. And these corporative interests and plutocrats have pretty much consolidated their efforts on a universal or international basis. And they have co-opted and corrupted all of our systems. And so I was listening to some of your people call in this morning about watching these hearings, which was just an operation of the insult to the intelligence of the American masses, right?
Yeah.
Because these corporatists, I would submit to you, the Republican Party, along with the Putin regime and plutocrats throughout the world, are demonstrating just how much power they exercise even over our judiciary and our policing organizations, from the FBI to the CIA and all entities. So this corruption is what's being manifested here. And so where you have, like the Labour Party in Britain, trying to do pushback on these corporative policies in Great Britain, this is going on throughout the world, and they are meeting with great success, right? So, I mean, we have really a one-party system here now. And I think what's being manifested is them consolidating power, and it's easy to do. Look at Wall Street. As all of this madness is going on in reference to I believe, the coup d'etat from a corporate point of view, with the Trump head on top of it, their stock prices are off the chart, right?
Sure.
And so why is this? Because we're living in very uncertain times.
Well, I think it's because of all the monopolies that exist.
I beg your pardon?
I said I think it's because essentially every industry in the United States has become monopolized. You have 4 airlines that control 70% of the business. You've got of the airline business, for example. You've got 5 banks that can probably control 70–80% of all the banks. These monopolies, they may not be more efficient, they may not be better for the customers, but they're massively more profitable from the corporate point of view. And you know, that's what's going on. But I agree with you. It's been a coup d'etat by the rich, and it started with, in my opinion, it started on a real serious way in January 1981 with the inauguration of Ronald Reagan. David, thank you. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and let's check in with Talk Media News. Our report today brought to you by Loving What You Do, The Elements of a Great Working Life, new book by Ellen Ratner, and goatsfortheoldgoats.com. Ellen Ratner on the line with us. Hey, Ellen, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. There was a hearing today, and it was the Senate Intelligence hearing today. No, it wasn't the Comey hearing. But actually, even though it really focused on what did the president know and when did he know it and all that kind of stuff later on in the hearing was ostensibly about Section 702, which allows the various departments, the various intelligence departments, to record and take conversations.
This is Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act of FISA.
That's right. It's the FISA Act. Now, what's fascinating about that is I was at a conference this weekend, and it was an addictions conference, and there was somebody that was working in Thailand, and I said to him, you know, no matter what you say, be sure you understand, because you're in a foreign place, they can take all your conversations. And another guy who had worked in intelligence in the United States said to me they record all your conversations. But if you heard this today, they're complimenting how they pay attention to the Fourth Amendment under a search and seizure, and that they never
talk to Ed Snowden about that.
And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
It was really unbelievable. Then they said the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, unmasked only 1,934 people in 2016. But they did say that the collection of data has increased every year. And they say they're very aware of the Fourth Amendment. And yes, occasionally things happen by mistake, but they don't happen because somebody wants them to. I'm like, okay. You have that, I have a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you.
Yep. By the way, Donald is probably going to sell that bridge as quickly as he can. It's part of his infrastructure privatization scheme.
He was just talking about that today, actually. I'll get to that in a
He's talking about it right now.
Okay, yes, that's exactly. He's been on the air talking about that. And then Senator Feinstein, kisses up to them. Well, there's only been less than 107,000 targets, and there's more than 1 billion people on the earth. Well, then, of course, they were asked about whether they would testify, whether Donald Trump actually asked them to do anything. And one of them said, well, I never felt any pressure, and nor was I pressured. And so one of the Democratic members of Congress said, well, I'm not asking you what you felt. I'm asking you what happened. All of the 4 refused today to talk in front of an open session. They said they would talk, well, some of them said they might talk in front of a closed session after they checked with the White House counsel to see if there was an executive privilege that the president would be taking.
Do you think that, that was Mike Rogers, Angus King, the independent senator who caucuses with the Democrats from Maine, just ripped him.
I'm not satisfied. I mean, he really went. Angus King was worse than any of the Democrats I heard from.
Oh yeah. It was really quite remarkable. Is it your sense, as a reporter, as a White House reporter who's been there forever and through numerous administrations, that these guys are cowed by Donald Trump? That they've seen him operate, they've seen him throw his own people under the bus, they've seen that. You have to have absolute total loyalty to him if you're going to be in the administration. Otherwise, get the hell out of the way, and they're just scared to death?
Well, I don't know if I've said this to you, but I know some people that work in the administration. Actually, I even have 2 cousins that do, if you can believe it. And so I said to somebody else, not one of my cousins, I said, I have somebody really good. It was for a job that was open. And they said, we have been told that we have to have loyalty. Well, is it loyalty to the president, or is it loyalty to the Constitution of the United States of America? That's what I thought people are loyal to.
Yeah, well, that's apparently the conversation that Trump had with Comey,
Exactly. All right. So Speaker Paul Ryan had a press conference today. He said he asked if a request had ever been made about collusion in terms of Russia, et cetera, and to weigh in publicly on his behalf. To Trump, he said no, one-word answer. Then President Trump announced today on Twitter that he's going to nominate Christopher Wray. Now, as you know, Senator Lieberman was one of the people that they looked at, but he turned it down because he felt it would be a conflict of interest with his law firm.
Right. Chris Wray has pretty good credentials, other than the fact that he's the guy who got Chris Christie off on Bridgegate.
Yes, he did.
And sent all his subordinates to jail.
Case.
I'm sorry.
He was also active in the Enron case, so that is his good news.
Right. So I think, Trump is, find me a lawyer who will save my butt and throw all of my underlings in jail if necessary. Well, this guy did it for Chris Christie. Okay, great. Hire him.
Yeah, I mean, clearly the guy, what can I say, right?
Yeah, we'll see where this goes, yes.
Okay, now a doctoral student, this was the alleged attacker outside Notre Dame Cathedral yesterday. They apparently went into he's in the hospital, they went into his house. He was a journalist getting the doctorate, if you can believe it or not, and he's from Algeria. Apparently they found a video in his house that pledged allegiance to ISIS.
This is the guy who yelled, "This is for Syria," and tried to hit a policeman with a hammer?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I have, as you know, as you just said, I've been at the White House a very long period of time, and never have I seen in the president's daily agenda the word victim used, even when President Bush went to 9/11. I've never seen 9/11 victims, anything like that. Well, today, the president talked about getting his intelligence briefing. I mean, that was the daily. And then it said, in the afternoon, the president will meet with Obamacare victims. I was like, of all the things I've seen covering the White House, that to me is the most astounding. Most of the press did not pick it up, but they just look at the schedule and don't think about it. I thought about it, and it drove me crazy. Also, he also said in his speech today, which he gave in Ohio, the great state of Ohio, even though he gave it in Cincinnati, and I'm very tribal. I'm from Cleveland. But he said that the Democrats were obstructionists. He said he wanted to see all of us come together. He was calling on all to come together. He said he would not get one vote for the Democrats. He said the coal miners were happy and they liked Trump. There was going to be clean air and clean water, and coal miners and steel workers were also going to have their job. He said what he was going to do for steel companies, and he was going to stop the dumping from other countries.
Right. Well, stopping dumping from other countries would be a fine thing. I've heard him talk about this for a year and a half. He's been president for 4 months. I've seen no action.
I haven't either.
I suspect this is just a reality show. It's reality shows, as we know, are not real. Ellen Ratner with Talk Media News. Thank you, Ellen.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com.
Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242 or visit tomsbeets.com. And welcome back to the Free Speech TV fundraising membership. Become part of the revolution and the resistance moment here. Your opportunity to call 877-378-8669 and make a contribution to Free Speech TV, this television network that is the little network that could and is. We are having an impact, and it really. Look back just like at the Bernie movement. Might that have happened had Bernie not been on this program for 11 years, every single Friday, talking to people all across the United States? One of Bernie's top staffers told me that literally everywhere they went, all over the country, when these large crowds would show up, people would start yelling, "Brunch with Bernie." This is like, which is not to take credit for Bernie and his phenomenon. Bernie is an amazing man and politician, and whether he'd ever been on my show or not, he may well have done exactly what he did. But we helped, and that's the point. And there's much more to do. I mean, we've got serious work ahead of us right now here in the United States, dealing with the crisis, basically, of a kleptocratic administration, a wholly sold-out Republican Party, a semi-corrupted Democratic Party, which is the predictable result of a corrupt political infrastructure that was created by a series of stupid Supreme Court decisions. And, this stuff isn't going to get fixed by listening to the news from giant multinational corporations run by right-wing billionaires, which is basically what we've got. It's going to be fixed by people like you and me getting out there and getting active and waking up our friends and communicating, having both a dialogue and a news nexus like this network. So this is really important. 877-378-8669. Our goals are $10,000 a day to raise. That's not that much money, even at $100 a person, when you consider that we're in, I think, 50 million homes just on Dish and Direct, plus we're on cable systems. I believe we're in 60 million homes. Whatever the number is, it's pretty extraordinary. Obviously, not all those people are watching, but there's a lot. So anyhow, our goal of $10,000 a day, we hit $3,000 on Monday. We hit $6,000 yesterday. Thank you. I asked you, to step up, and a lot of people did. I asked the people at Free Speech TV who answer the phones, when they take the calls, I said, what's really hot? What are people? And they said, your book, What Would Jefferson Do? So we've slightly changed the order of things, of the premiums that we're giving, in the hopes of increasing somewhat the average gift, as it were. So with a $60 gift right now, you get the Pocket Constitution, and this is, a good and useful thing to have. It really is. Whether you get it here or elsewhere, it's, you should have this. And these cards published by the American Civil Liberties Union, two of them, either the Know Your Rights at Demonstrations and Protests or Know Your Rights at College for LGBT Students. So you get that with a $60 gift or $5 a month. Any of these can be, made monthly as well. With a $120 gift, you get Howard Zinn's book, The People's History of the United States, which is, one of the very best history books ever written about the United States. With a $240 gift, you get my book, What Would Jefferson Do? This is a book that I wrote after spending, probably at least 2 years reading these 10 volumes of Jefferson's stuff that came with his old house we bought in 1997 in Vermont. They were all water stained and you know, unsaleable or usable, but they were still readable. And there's some great stuff in there. That's with our $240 gift. Plus, with $240, you get the Pocket Constitution, and you get the cards about how to know your rights, either at protests or for LGBT folks in college, and you get the Free Speech TV sticker. With a $360 gift, you get Howard Zinn's book, The People's History of the United States. You get a paperback that goes along with this, which is by a variety of other authors called The Voices of the People's History. It goes along, I guess, with people's history. You get the Pocket Constitution and you get the Free Speech TV sticker. That's with a $360 gift. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Washington, D.C., and I'll take you to lunch. We'll have a pizza party. Sometimes we get a couple of people from Free Speech TV. Sometimes it's just one or two. It's always nice. I always have a good time. And I've met some just extraordinary people. And in fact, I think you've met some of them as well. So those are the gifts. Those are the different giving levels. And but the bottom line is not so much the gifts and the giving levels. It's that Free Speech TV is so important. It's this little network that runs on an annual budget that's a shoestring. You know, it's a $3 million budget for an entire television network. We're trying to raise $300,000 in this fund drive. We need to raise $10,000 today. Please, your contribution is important. 877-378-8669. Please call. Thank you so much.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And in the studio with me, Charles Sauer, the libertarian economist and president of the Market Institute, marketinstitute.org. You can tweet him at Charles Sauer, S-A-U-E-R, is the website. And I know I've got it. Here it is right here. There is Charles, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you with us. Sorry about that. I've been trying to do three things at once here. There's a race going on in Georgia to replace Tom Price, who went off to
reform our healthcare system and put us back on track for good.
Yeah, right. To destroy Obamacare. And it's between John Ossoff, the Democrat, and Karen Handel, the Republican. She is probably most famous for being in charge of the breast cancer charity, the Susan G. Komen Foundation, and looking to cut the funds that they were giving to Planned Parenthood, and Planned Parenthood freaked out. Everybody freaked out. Women across America freaked out, and Karen Handel got fired, and now she's running for Congress. But that's not her only claim to fame. She also, I think, agrees with you politically or economically on a lot of stuff. And here's just a little clip from her debate with John Ossoff last night. Here he is.
Does either candidate support a minimum wage increase? Mr. Ossoff, starts with you.
Yes, I do. The minimum wage should be a living wage. I think we can raise it indexed to the cost of living, because the cost of living varies widely in urban and rural areas and in different states across this country. I think that increase needs to be implemented at a pace that allows business owners to adapt their business plans so they're not shocked. Their business plans are not shocked by a sudden increase in labor costs. But look, if someone's working a 40-hour work week, they deserve the kind of standard of living that Americans expect. That's part of the American dream, and there are too many folks who are having trouble making ends meet.
Minimum wage.
This is an example of the fundamental difference between a liberal and a conservative. I do not support a livable wage. What I support is making sure that we have an economy that is robust with low taxes and less regulation, so that those small businesses that would be dramatically hurt if you impose higher minimum wages on them are able to do what they do best, grow jobs and create good paying jobs for people in the 6th District.
Right. Now, it seems a little contradictory. I don't support a livable wage, but we want to support companies that are going to do wages. But Nick Hanauer, and I actually have a whole study around here someplace. Actually, I think I tossed it already. But there's a study that just came out. Nick Hanauer is the founder of the Patriotic Millionaires. He's a billionaire. He's a tech billionaire, and he's been on this program a couple of times. And he wrote a piece for Business Insider that was just published. It says a report that analyzed every minimum wage hike since 1938, which is when the minimum wage was put into place. Should put a bunch of nonsense. Actually, it was put in place in 35. 38 was the first increase in it. Should put a bunch of nonsense ideas to rest. He said, we have been raising the minimum wage for 78 years. A new study reveals 78 years of minimum wage hikes have produced zero evidence of the job-killing consequences these headline writers want us to fear. Of the nearly 24 federal minimum wage hikes since 1938, total year-over-year employment actually increased 68% of the time. And in the sectors most affected by the minimum wage, employment actually went up 73% in retail, 82% in low-wage leisure and hospitality. He said that these basic economic indicators show no correlation between federal minimum wage increases and lower employment levels. This is from the study. And perhaps even more strikingly, after decades of, well, actually, now it's starting to get into the kind of wonky stuff. But basically, he says that a rising income inequality, which is the result of not having a higher minimum wage. Today's minimum wage would be $19 an hour if it was indexed to inflation in 1968. Because of this income inequality and the reduced consumer demand that comes with it, it has reduced U.S. economic growth over the last 20 years by between 6 and 9%. If the economy were 9% bigger today, there would be 11 million additional jobs. So this anti-minimum wage ideology has not only been wrong, but it has hurt our country. What say you, Charles?
I say, first off, to get to there, you have to start from the wrong reason the minimum wage was put in place. So if we go back to when the minimum wage was passed, and we've talked about this before, but in 1935, the debate on the Senate floor wasn't about a living wage. It wasn't about increasing wages for workers. In fact, it was the fact that Southern truck drivers weren't charging as much as the Northern truck drivers, and the Northern senators didn't think that that was a fair thing. And so they forced the Southern truck drivers to charge as much as the Northern truck drivers. So the increase in 1938 maybe it did increase employment in the North, but that doesn't mean that it didn't hurt it in the South. And if we look through recent history at increases in the minimum wage, what we have in the study is correlational, but most of the time that we have increases in the minimum wage is when the economy's doing good and we're accelerating. It's not when the economy's going down and then you increase the minimum wage. But look, if you want a high minimum wage, we look at the economy in Europe, where they have double the unemployment rate that we have. The unemployment rate for middle-aged workers.
You can't generalize Europe. You've got, Southern Europe is in a crisis for a variety of reasons. If you want to use either pick a country, or if you want to pick a region, I'd say go for Scandinavia, which is not in crisis. It's, the average unemployment rate in Scandinavia is below 4%, I believe.
I think that the study that I'm referring to, or the numbers that I'm referring to, just come from the Eurozone. So it is generalizing a little bit.
Because that includes Greece, where you've got an unemployment rate of 40%.
But look, if you look at the unemployment rate for middle-aged workers, let's just call it, let's call it 30 to 55, 30 to 50. It's about the same as in the U.S. And where the higher wages and the higher regulations hurt workers are on the young end and the old end. So yes, this is another sign of the left.
There's no evidence of that. I'm looking at evidence here. There's no evidence of that. And beyond that, what is wrong with saying to a business owner, somebody like you or me, if you want to do business in the United States, if you want the privilege of limited liability, if you want the privilege of being able to deduct your rent, if you want the privilege of being, I can take you out to lunch this afternoon. We can have a $300 lunch downtown, and we can have, 3 cocktails each and get plastered, and we can deduct it from our taxes because we both own small businesses. If we want to have those privileges, then the price of that privilege is you have to pay your workers so that they're not living in poverty. What's wrong with that?
I'm opposed to a territorial tax system because of what you just said, because of the advantages that we receive from having a company here. On the other hand, your employees are something that is inside of your business. If you don't pay your employers well, I want to have the ability to poach them. I want to have the ability to outcompete you and hire your employees.
Well, you can always do that, regardless of what I'm paying them. But, the minimum wage is not going to stop that, for goodness sake.
Well, it might be for you. I know that you like to pay on the low end of that spectrum, right? That's not true. I'm just...
No, I think we pay fairly well.
It's the fact of in competition... that's the way the minimum wage is set. And let me address first off the candidates' remarks. The candidates' remarks were ridiculous. I support
Karen Handel.
Karen Handels. I support a living wage. I just don't support the fairy tale minimum wage that is government set, right? I support a living wage
so you think
that
that
is
the
set
government
through competition.
Should, oh, see, in other words, you don't think that the government... So back to my original point. If the government is us, if we are... There is this thing called society, and if the whole point, the whole reason why we authorize government to provide all these benefits to businesses is because those businesses are doing some good for society, shouldn't one of the basic rules of doing business be that you have to pay your people enough that they can live?
Look, you own a small business, and if it was Thom Hartmann sitting in the making up the minimum wage division, maybe you're going to make up the right minimum wage. But the fact is that, it's a bureaucrat. I talked last week on here about the 28-year-old bureaucrat that's running the net neutrality and figuring out how they're going to run the internet. This is a bureaucrat.
I'm talking about a principle. I'm talking about a simple principle. This is Teddy Roosevelt proposed this in 1912. He said, I call for a living wage. He said, Ossoff almost quoted him. He said it's going to vary around the country depending on local conditions, but a minimum wage should provide for the ability to educate your children, the ability to live without having to resort to crime, the ability to tide the family over during periods of sickness, the ability to take an annual vacation, and to set aside enough to educate your children. I think I said that, and to set aside enough for a decent retirement. Those were the components of what he called a living wage in 1912. And, that living wage today, there's a broad consensus that $15 is probably, it's just a starting point. But, our minimum wage right now is what, $7.25?
I don't even know what it is. It's low when you look at it nationally, but that's because
if you look at it, nation crazy.
If you look at it nationally, there's 23 states, I believe, that have passed higher minimum wages. So even I don't believe in setting a minimum wage, but on the federal level, it makes almost no sense. And it definitely doesn't make sense to set a national minimum wage after 23 states, which is the way our government set up.
With the principle that if somebody is working, if somebody's going to bust their butt for 40 hours a week, that they should be able to have the American dream. They should be able to have a decent life.
I'm saying that
You're saying that doesn't matter.
That somebody should, that they're choosing the job.
That will be magically produced by this religion of the free market.
It happens all the time. I have family in Kansas that advertises jobs at minimum wage and nobody shows up. You increase the job at a little bit over minimum wage and still nobody shows up. You have to get to a multiple higher than minimum wage, $4, $5 more than minimum wage before the people that you want to hire start showing up for that job. That is the free market. That's people choosing to go work.
That's preying on desperation is what it's doing. That is arbitrage of labor. That's
preying on desperation for somebody to show up and want to work for that wage.
Yeah, I'm desperate enough for a living that I'll work for $9 an hour.
I'm desperate enough for a living that I'll take contracts that when they come in based on what I think is right. That's
a whole different thing, though.
I'm not making minimum wage. I'm not. But I'm looking at what is my value? When am I willing to go? When am I willing to take a contract?
See, that's what entrepreneurs do. The first 4 years of this radio program, I not only took no money out of it, I put money into it.
And you should have the right for that. I want my daughters to have the right to do that.
But that has nothing to do with my employees. That has nothing to do with the minimum wage.
If you're talking about it from that point of view, but the fact is I want my daughters to have the right to go take a job for $7 an hour, right? I want my daughters to have the right to go take a job for $4 an hour.
So you want them to have the right to live in poverty?
No, I want them to be able to start and get experience.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Okay, you got the last word. Charles Sauer, great to have you with us.
Thank you.
We'll be back. And welcome back. Oh, my. Let's see what's on the call board here. Corky, watching Free Speech TV in Hilton, New York. Hey, Corky, what's on your mind today?
Hello, Tom. Yeah, I don't understand why people don't get Donald Trump. He goes out there and he's like Santa Claus. I'm going to give you all this stuff. And he says the Democrats were giveaway people. This guy's going to give us everything, but
Right.
he's got no way to pay for it.
Right.
He don't want to raise taxes on the wealthy. He's going to give us great health care. Well, nobody's seen that yet. Why does he still have any followers or any supporters?
Because as either A.J. Liebling or P.T. Barnum said, there's a sucker born every minute.
Yeah, but do we have that many suckers in this country?
Yeah, we do. I mean, look at the outcome of the election. Obviously we do.
Yeah, well, it was only 40% of the available.
Oh, it's not, the majority of Americans are not suckers. And the majority of the electorate are not suckers. Hillary Clinton got 3 million more votes than Donald Trump. I mean, the majority of Americans said, this guy's crazy. But, that's not how we decide elections in the United States, thanks to, slavery at the time that the Constitution was written. And so instead, we've got this electoral college thing that was designed to, help out the slave states. And it still is, by the way, helping out the old slave states.
I'm waiting for Comey's testimony.
Yeah, I think that's going to be we've got now I think 3 different bars in D.C. now that are opening early that are running happy hours. I'm waiting for them to start competing. It's how cheap the drinks are going to be, or whether they're going to serve pot or something. It's who knows. Anyhow, Corky, thanks a lot for the call. It's good to hear from you. Mike in Seattle. Hey, Mike, what's on your mind? Thanks for listening to KBCS.
Hi, Tom. In the last elections and the last few elections, I was able to watch C-SPAN and I think BBC World News, and they covered the election, and they showed the.
You're talking the British elections?
The British elections.
Right.
And what they do is a community effort. They actually count the votes in a stadium with everybody in the place watching.
Right.
And then they do a tally at the end, and everybody says, here's my report.
Right. Yeah, this is how we used to do it here. I mean, when I was 7 years old, my mom was one of those people who, signed people in and counted the votes when they left.
It was like watching community happen.
Yeah.
Oh, one more thing. Guess what? Al Jazeera English is now available on YouTube, a live station, 24 hours a day.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I find Al Jazeera to be a pretty good news source. And I, as I said yesterday in my interview with, I'm forgetting his name now, but David Hurst. Thank you, Troy. The fellow from MiddleEastEye.net. That I think that the main reason why the Saudis and their hard right Wahhabist Sunni buddies are going after Qatar right now is and Qatar's been no angel in this regard, but I think it's because Qatar sponsors Al Jazeera and they do not like even a slightly independent news voice in the Middle East. Mike, thanks a lot for the call. We'll be back in just a second.
Hi there, I'm Marie with Free Speech TV. Your support, whether through giving donations, volunteering, or spreading the word about Free Speech TV, has made it possible for the only independent progressive news network to exist. And for that, I want to say thank you. Now you can give to the network powered by the people by donating an unwanted or used vehicle through our Vehicles of Change program. If you have an old car, RV, or even a motorcycle, Free Speech TV can use it to grow and thrive. You can make a bigger difference in supporting Free Speech TV by giving an old car. It's a great way to support the network without having to dig into your bank account. Just call 877-378-8669 and ask for more information about Vehicles of Change. Again, the number to call is 877-378-8669. If it has a VIN, we'll take it in. Thank you.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. We have covered a lot of territory in the 2.5 hours that we've been on the air. So let's see what you have to think about, say, thought, whatever, about all of this. Joe in Chicago Heights, Illinois. Hey, Joe, what's on your mind today? Joe? Listening on WCPT? No Joe. Well, let's try George listening on WCPT in Chicago. Hey, George, what's up?
Hi, Tom.
Hey, what's up?
My call. If I was in a discussion with your guest, Charles Sauer, about the minimum wage, this is what I'd tell him. Okay, the federal minimum wage, what is it, around $7 or $8 an hour?
Yeah, I think it's $7.25.
Yeah, around $300 a week. But if it costs twice that much to live decently, in other words, in 20 hours, you would need to be paid twice as much to live decently. So that means in 40 hours, you're only going to make really 20 hours worth of what it costs to live decently.
Right.
Which means that for 20 hours, you're giving at no free choice by yourself against your free will. You're giving essentially free labor to your employer.
Yeah,
and
you're sliding
slavery.
backwards.
We fought the Civil War to end that.
Yeah, well, to end a far more brutal form of that. But yeah, I get what you're saying. So essentially, what
you're the insidious process that never seems to end is that bosses and employers and owners want to squeeze every last drop of blood out of you on the job.
Yeah.
And yet.
The real war that was fought to end that, George, was between roughly 1890 and 1935. And that was the war within the United States, and people died in this war. That was the war to legalize unions and to build a unionized workforce so that workers could have a voice in their own employment, so that the power of aggregated capital could be matched by the power of aggregated labor. And that movement, that war was won from 1935 until 1981. And then in 81, Reagan, when he fired PATCO, the Professional Air Traffic Controllers Organization, began the process of deconstructing labor in the United States, because labor had traditionally been a big funder of the Democratic Party. And we've gone from about a third of our labor force being unionized, which means about 2/3 of our labor force had jobs that were equivalent to a union wage, from a third of our workforce having been unionized to 6% right now of our non-governmental workforce, and that's nuts. And you're right. I'm concerned about calling it wage slavery, because just like I don't like using Holocaust references, I think it minimizes slavery, but it is not a healthy thing. Thank you, George, for your call.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Back with more of your calls, my thoughts, and the news of the day right after this. It's 28 minutes past the hour. And welcome back to the Free Speech TV fundraising membership. Become part of the revolution and the resistance moment here. Your opportunity to call 877-378-8669 and make a contribution to Free Speech TV, this television network that is the little network that could and is. We are having an impact, and it really. Look back just like at the Bernie movement. Might that have happened had Bernie not been on this program for 11 years, every single Friday, talking to people all across the United States? One of Bernie's top staffers told me that literally everywhere they went, all over the country, when these large crowds would show up, people would start yelling, "Brunch with Bernie." This is like, which is not to take credit for Bernie and his phenomenon. Bernie is an amazing
man and politician, and whether he'd ever been on my show or not, he may well have done exactly what he did. But we helped, and that's the point. And there's much more to do. I mean, we've got serious work ahead of us right now here in the United States, dealing with the crisis, basically, of a kleptocratic administration, a wholly sold-out Republican Party, a semi-corrupted Democratic Party, which is the predictable result of a corrupt political infrastructure that was created by a series of stupid Supreme Court decisions. And, you know, this stuff isn't going to get fixed by listening to the news from giant multinational corporations run by right-wing billionaires, which is basically what we've got. It's going to be fixed by people like you and me getting out there and getting active and waking up our friends and communicating, having both a dialogue and a news nexus like this network. So this is really important. 877-378-8669. Our goals are $10,000 a day to raise. That's not that much money, even at $100 a person, when you consider that we're in, I think, 50 million homes just on Dish and Direct, plus we're on cable systems. I believe we're in 60 million homes. Whatever the number is, it's pretty extraordinary. Obviously, not all those people are watching, but there's a lot. So anyhow, our goal of $10,000 a day, we hit 3,000 on Monday. We hit 6,000 yesterday. Thank you. I asked you, to step up, and a lot of people did. I asked the people at Free Speech TV who answer the phones, when they take the calls, I said, what's really hot? What are people? And they said, your book, What Would Jefferson Do? So we've slightly changed the order of things, of the premiums that we're giving, in the hopes of increasing somewhat the average gift, as it were. So with a $60 gift right now, you get the Pocket Constitution, and this is, a good and useful thing to have. It really is. Whether you get it here or elsewhere, it's, you should have this. And these cards published by the American Civil Liberties Union, two of them, either the Know Your Rights at Demonstrations and Protests or Know Your Rights at College for LGBT Students. So you get that with a $60 gift or $5 a month. Any of these can be, made monthly as well. With a $120 gift, you get Howard Zinn's book, The People's History of the United States, which is, one of the very best history books ever written about the United States. With a $240 gift, you get my book, What Would Jefferson Do? This is a book that I wrote after spending, probably at least 2 years reading these 10 volumes of Jefferson's stuff that came with his old house we bought in 1997 in Vermont. They were all water-stained and unsaleable or usable, but they were still readable. And there's some great stuff in there. That's with our $240 gift. Plus, with $240, you get the Pocket Constitution, and you get the cards about how to know your rights, either at protests or for LGBT folks in college, and you get the Free Speech TV sticker. With a $360 gift, you get Howard Zinn's book, The People's History of the United States. You get a paperback that goes along with this, which is by a variety of other authors, called The Voices of the People's History. It goes along, I guess, with people's history. You get the Pocket Constitution, and you get the Free Speech TV sticker. That's with the $360 gift. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Washington, D.C., and I'll take you to lunch. We'll have a pizza party. Sometimes we get a couple of people from Free Speech TV. Sometimes it's just one or two. It's always nice. I always have a good time. And I've met some just extraordinary people. And in fact, I think you've met some of them as well. So those are the gifts. Those are the different giving levels. And but the bottom line is not so much the gifts and the giving levels. It's that Free Speech TV is so important. It's this little network that runs on an annual budget that's a shoestring. It's a $3 million budget for an entire television network. We're trying to raise $300,000 in this fund drive. We need to raise $10,000 today. Please, your contribution is important. 877-378-8669. Please call. Thank you so much.
connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All the important stories we cover and the issues we care about are at hartmanreport.com. Members of our community can comment and join the conversation.
Oh, my. Keith Olbermann just tweeted, oops, FBI nominee Wray, Christopher Wray, is a partner at the law firm where a partner is ethics advisor to Trump's business trust. And he links to a Newsweek story about it. You know, I thought it was enough that Wray was the guy who got Chris Christie off. You know, it's pretty amazing. Anyhow, if you happen to be in D.C. tomorrow, I'll be, here in the studio doing show prep. But everybody's opening at 9:30 in the morning because the testimony is going to begin probably around 10, I'm guessing. At Union Pub is going to be offering a free round of drinks every time the president tweets during the testimony, Comey's testimony. The special will run until the testimony is over or by 4, whichever comes first. Duffy's Irish Pub on Vermont Avenue, this is right around the corner from us, is opening early, and they're serving a Covfefe, however you say it, cocktail. The Shaw's Tavern in the Northwest, they've got the Comey Hearing Covfefe, and they say that they're going to be open at 9:30. Their specials include $5 Stoli vodka, an FBI sandwich, fried chicken breast, bacon, and iceberg lettuce, FBI, on a toasted bun with fries, and an FBI breakfast, French toast, bacon, and ice cream, FBI. That's ice cream? That's a stretch. So anyhow, that's what's going on here. I'm not sure what's going on with you, but we will keep you apprised, by the way, of what's going on with that testimony, and maybe even carry part of it tomorrow. We'll see how it goes. I have a feeling much of the fireworks part is going to be over by the time we get on the air. Anyhow, back to your calls. Andy in Vancouver, Washington. Hey, Andy, what's on your mind?
Hi, Tom. How are you?
I'm well.
Good. I'm happy to hear that. I was just wondering, you have these debates with these gentlemen that talk about raising the minimum wage and whatnot. And in these debates, I never hear anybody talk about the fact that whether you're a sole proprietorship, an LLC, or whatever corporation you are, you get to write off as a deduction towards your taxable income 80% of what you pay your employees for a wage.
I thought it was 100%.
No, it's only 100% if they do it through temp services. That's why you've seen such a rise in the temp services, is because temp services is 100% of services.
Oh, that's interesting. You can tell I don't do my own taxes.
80%.
Yeah, 80%. Huh. I didn't know that. Is that any idea when that was passed? Because
it's been part. It may have changed recently, but I graduated.
Back in the 70s, I used to do the bookkeeping for my own company back in the 70s, and we could fully deduct our employee costs. I'm pretty sure.
I think much like you've pointed out other things over time, I think that was something that happened towards the tail end of our friend Reagan's term. But
that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense, because that's about the time that Manpower went from being this place where you went to get somebody to help you install some sheetrock, when you were just in a pinch and needed some help, to basically being, your full-time labor force, and not just Manpower, all these other temp service companies.
That's why the temp services have had such a rise, and it's so easy because then you're not on that company's books. They have no expenditures for you at all,
right?
As far as your FICA, your
I'm thinking back, in 86, 87, Louise and I started an ad agency in Atlanta, and by 89, we were doing pretty well. We had rented a major, a 7th floor office on a major building in Atlanta and had, 16 employees or thereabouts. And we went with employee leasing at that point in time. And the leasing company provided a 401k to our employees. It provided health insurance to them. It simplified things. It radically decreased my workload with regard to all that. But I don't remember that there was a tax advantage, although I'm guessing there probably was. It was the one and only time that I've ever done anything like that. That wasn't, though, hiring employees through another company, although all of my employees essentially became employees of this employee leasing company. but it was really just a way of, consolidating all your HR stuff.
Correct.
Ultimately, I thought it was it turned out to be a pain in the ass. And after we left the company, I never got my 401k contributions. I'm not even sure the company continued to exist. But anyway.
The reason I bring it up is because, your listeners, probably not myself, but most of your listeners are pretty intelligent, and you yourself are. But it seems like most of the people that I talk to, especially in the workforce, I went to school for accounting, but I found it difficult to find a job that paid a decent rate starting out. So I went back to running warehouses, and everyone that I communicate with, no one has a clue that your boss gets to write off 80% of what they pay you as a tax deduction towards their taxable income.
Yeah.
So everybody's always crying for the businesses, but our entire tax code is set up to help subsidize them because, like you said, it's a benefit for the entire society.
Yeah, and therefore business should benefit society. Andy, thanks for that.
Absolutely.
Thanks for sharing that with me. I appreciate it. Thanks for the call. Jeff in San Francisco. Hey, Jeff, what's up?
Hey, Tom. I'm going to read 2 sentences from my new Bible, from Ellen Brown, Web of Debt.
Oh, yeah.
Canada did too. The Bank of Canada became publicly owned in 1938 and successfully funded the government for nearly 40 years after that, including underwriting the Canadian single-payer healthcare system. So the Canadian province of Alberta had also had policy-owned banks since 1938, which had served to provide ready credit for the local economy. So,
although wasn't that done away with one of the conservative governments that took over Canada in the post-Reagan years?
Yes, it did. I think about 88, something like that.
Yeah.
They said it's in place for 50 years. So basically, single payer in the country is no-brainer, but California has got to lead the way.
Oh, and if California had a state bank, they could fund their own single-payer program with it.
Oh, exactly. That's what I was filling up with that.
Yeah.
Canada did it with Tommy Douglas was 62.
Yeah, I don't recall the year. It was in the 60s, though, yeah.
So, I mean, it's pretty much no-brainer. So I've been getting on my town halls, asking about the town halls. I brought this up a few times. So any other Californians out there listening, please get on roll. Ellen Brown's got a group down in Los Angeles for California State Bank. I'm wanting to get one started up here in Northern California. Slow process. I watch my father-in-law with dementia, but every chance I get on the web and try to hook up other people. So.
Yeah. Good on you, Jeff. Good on you. And you're spot on. Ellen Brown is brilliant, and she's absolutely right. We need state banks all over the country. Jeff, thank you for the call. David in Cape Canaveral, Florida. Hey, David, you wanted to talk about President Mike Pence?
Yeah, I was just wondering if Trump, skips out like, President Nixon, can Pence just do blanket pardons and have him free from everything? So
yeah, just like Jerry Ford did.
And all his under?
Yeah, just like Jerry Ford did for Richard Nixon, just like George Bush Sr. did for Reagan. He didn't have to pardon Reagan, but he pardoned a whole bunch of Reagan's officials. The Reagan administration had more senior officials convicted of felonies than any administration in history. It was the most corrupt administration in the history of the United States. That record might well be broken by the Trump administration. Time will tell. But yeah, Pence can. The power of the pardon is one of the very few powers that are given to a federal branch in the Constitution without limitation.
So he could go all the way down to paper shufflers in the White House.
He could pardon anybody he wants. As many as he wants, as long as he wants, under whatever terms he wants. There's absolutely no restrictions on it. And to the best of my knowledge, Congress has never, passed any kind of law that would restrict it. And frankly, I think if they did, the Supreme Court would overturn it because it's right there in the Constitution. So that's the scenario we can be looking at, and probably will, frankly, because Jerry Ford set this terrible precedent by keeping Richard Nixon out of jail, and and bailing out a bunch of Nixon's cronies. So that's where it goes, and I'm fully expecting. David, thank you for the call. If Trump goes down in flames via an impeachment route, or criminal prosecution route or something like that. I'm far more enamored with the idea. I'm far more, I more closely believe that probably Trump will just quit. But, but if he gets impeached, sure, pencil, pardon everybody.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
I mean, he'll ask Mother first, right? But she'll say, yes, go ahead and pardon everybody. And then Mike Pence will. And welcome back. Bill in Santa Maria, California. Hey, Bill, what's on your mind today? Thanks for watching Free Speech on DirecTV.
I am on my iPhone, Tom. This is Bill and Soon. That
hi,
company. Bill. How are you? How's
Good.
Louise?
Good, fine. And I hope Soon as well, too.
Yes, we're doing very well. We want to come and see you again. I'm calling you about federal grand juries. There's a lot of talk about U.S. attorneys and the grand juries. There's sort of a sacrosanct tone to that talk. And I just want to tell you a little bit about my experience on a federal grand jury in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. It was the most shocking judicial thing. I couldn't believe it. First of all, the accused has no access to that room and that group.
Right.
And the group is a lot of retired people who have fun for the first time. We were in there for 6 months. And the first time is fun, second time, and then they get very bored and it becomes very routine, and they do whatever the U.S. attorney tells them to do.
Right.
And we were expected to indict everybody, true bill. Everybody. And the accused, they came in and talk about the accused, talked about priors with him, which I thought was not right, because we're supposed to be considering the crime under consideration,
right,
not what this guy's done with his life. So one time, I was kind of ticked off about this. There was one guy, a postal worker, and he's some older guy, and he put something in his locker or something. It seemed very minor. So I said, we should turn in a no true bill on this one, which would be the first one we ever did. So the assistant U.S. attorney comes in and goes down the list, true bill, indicted. And then it comes to this guy, and we said, no true bill. And the guy, his mouth dropped open, and he said, quote, "You can't do that."
Really?
Federal grand jury says, yes, I swear to God. He said, you can't do that. And then he said, Bob, I don't have the paperwork for that one, for that kind of thing. And we were embarrassed. We felt like we committed a federal crime of some kind.
Right.
And especially the people, I worked in government, so I didn't feel totally uncomfortable. Most of them didn't. And they felt like, they're a little bit intimidated. They had done something the U.S. attorney didn't like. And so I don't know whatever happened to that poor guy, but we kind of went on to the next case, the next indictment.
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that grand juries, I realize the phrase is in the Constitution, but there's not a clear definition of them. And I think that they violate constitutional norms, particularly the 5th through the 8th Amendments of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights.
Well, I'll tell you, ours sure did. And I just changed my whole opinion of the justice system. I mean, really.
Yeah.
U.S. attorney.
No, it's like a star chamber,
Yes. Okay, Tom, let's see.
You guys still sailing around, Bill?
We went to Cuba last year. And,
whoa, you sailed your own boat down there?
Yeah, from Florida. The hardest thing was going through the Coast Guard regulations. They don't want to give up that police power that they've had for so many years.
No, and Trump, since Obama did it, Trump is going to try and undo it, because we can't have that guy have any legacy at all. After all, Bill, nice talking to you. Say hi to Soon for me, and thanks a lot for the call. And I'm spot on the federal grand juries. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Pierre in Ramona, California. Hey, Pierre, what's on your mind today? Pierre?
Hey.
Hey,
this is Pete.
you're on the air.
Pete. Yeah, this is Pete from Ramona. California.
Oh, Pete, I'm sorry. Hey, Pete, what's up?
Border guard running for Congress down here against Duncan Hunter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Two things. We just made a donation to you, and the reason why we did, and it was a good one, that I can't donate anymore, or my wife can't donate anymore to my campaign. So I said, what the heck? If you can't give it to me, let's give it to Free Speech TV.
Yeah, well, that's good of you.
It's so important because, I do have just a little argument with you about Bernie Sanders during your fund drive broadcast. You say that maybe you didn't have much to do with getting Bernie out there. I think you had 100% to do with.
Well, I just I don't want to take anything away from him. I mean, he's a great guy.
Of course, you're that kind of a guy. Well, I'm a listener. And I had to come and listen every Friday, definitely, Brunch with Bernie, just to get to hear him and see him because he was not represented in mainstream media.
No.
I mean, it was disgusting. I was a delegate at the convention in Philly, and the way we were treated and the way he was treated was just, this is what got me. One of the things that got me into politics is to fight and keep our democracy going.
Pierre, I don't want to relitigate the Bernie-Hillary wars, but or Pete, excuse me, but you are running in the Democratic primary to unseat to be the Democrat who's going to unseat Duncan Hunter in California. You want to toss out your the website?
Yeah, the website is Beauregard, BEAUREG, the number 4, Congress.com. And my motto is country before party.
There you
definitely.
Go. BeauregardforCongress.com. Thank you. Thank you, Pete. Good talking to you. I appreciate the call. Bruce in Palmyra, New Jersey. Hey, Bruce, what's up?
Hi. So my question is that with Pence in the back and as a backup and a guy that would give the Republicans everything they want, why are the Republicans so fearful of moving against Donald Trump? This man is an embarrassment. He's got a low rating. He's dangerous. What is the story here? Why are they so afraid of this guy and afraid to do something about him?
Well, one of the things that we think we know, based on things that James Comey has said, is that Trump is demanding a loyalty oath, not to the Constitution, not to the country, but to him personally, of all the senior officials in his administration. And it's one of the reasons why, he fired basically half the U.S. attorneys resigned after he fired the other half. And, they haven't been replaced. And yesterday he was saying the Democrats are obstructing me. He hasn't even put forward nominees. And part of that is that people don't want to work for him. They don't want to, bow on knee and kiss his ring. But I think that the 4 guys who were testifying before Congress today, I'm guessing all of them have provided Donald Trump with an oath of loyalty, or if they haven't, they know that if they betray his loyalty, that he will destroy them. And they've got good jobs and good positions, and they're doing important work, and they don't want to sacrifice that for a few minutes in the spotlight, or for bringing Trump his comeuppance when they know that in all probability James Comey is going to do it for them tomorrow. So that's my theory of what's going on. I think Trump is running this country like a mafia boss, and the principles of the mob. It's omerta, right? Silence. It's increasingly looking to me like our country's being run, at least in the executive branch. At least the White House is being run like a mafia family, like a mob family. And I'd be afraid of those guys if they were my employers too. Bruce, I got to move along, but thanks for the call. Brendan in Allentown, New Jersey. Hey, Brendan, what's up?
Hey, Tom, how are you?
Good. What's on your mind?
Hey, you've talked about Chris Christie a few times today. I didn't hear you make any talk about our new candidates for governor who are going to replace Chris Christie. How much do you know about him?
I know nothing about him. Inform me.
Well, the Democrats elected Phil Murphy, who is a Goldman Sachs guy who got himself elected very similar to John Corzine did by dumping cash to all 21 county party bosses.
No, that's unfortunate.
Republicans chose Kim Guadagno, who is Christie's lieutenant governor, which is surprising because he's so toxic. She can't be seen with him. So, it's shaping to be an interesting election because I wasn't excited about Phil Murphy, but because he didn't, he came from the outside, he bought his way there. Ironically, he labeled himself as a grassroots progressive, which
well, just because he basically bought his way into the election doesn't mean he doesn't have good politics.
I agree. I agree.
I mean, frankly, I'd rather see him use his own money than use Monsanto's, wouldn't you?
I would. I would. It's just that then, like he beat out a couple longtime legislators, who have a lot of experience in the legislature.
Yeah.
So, listen, Corzine had a tough time dealing with the legislature. Chris Christie was he had very limited political experience, and now we have Phil Murphy, who also bought his way to be ambassador to Germany because he dumped a load of money to Biden and Obama.
Yeah.
So,
but there's, again, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, essentially it's become a political tradition, is the way that you pay back your large campaign donors is with, non-crucial diplomatic postings. So I get it that you've got a certain amount of distaste for the guy. I'd have to learn more about him before I could pass judgment, as it were. Brendan, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. Brian in Pacific Grove, California. We got a minute left. Brian, it's yours. What's up?
Oh, no, we got to rush. All right, Tom. Well, one, I would like to thank you for being probably one of the only rational left voices in America, American media.
Thank you.
Two, I'd like to compliment a caller from a while back, Andy, said he wasn't smart. I'd like to tell you are smart, buddy. You taught Tom something about the 80% of the taxes.
Oh, yeah.
But I called about North Korea. I've called before. I'm a Marxist-Leninist communist, and I was reading an article, actually, on North Korea. Interestingly enough, in the early 2000s, they rewrote their constitution, and they dropped all references to Marxism and to communism. And the official reason given by the Workers' Party is that it's too hard. It was too hard to achieve.
Interesting.
Yeah, and
interesting.
Yeah, and so they've moved from their socialist-ic.
Yeah. Well, I think it's been a dictatorship all along. Brian, we're out of time, but thanks for the call. That's fascinating. I didn't know that. Thanks so much for being with us, and don't forget, democracy is not a spectator's sport. And don't do the shots every time Trump tweets tomorrow. It's like, let your liver survive this thing. But get out there, get active, and democracy requires you. Tag your. We'll see you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com.
Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242
or visit tomsbeets.com.